Good morning, everyone. We'll call the meeting to order. Council is conducting this meeting in person and via conference call in accordance with the Municipal Government Act, Section 199. Council chambers is open for public attendance. However, councillors and members of the public may still join meetings remotely using our teleconference process. If you've submitted a comment request to administration prior to the meeting, the chair will call on you at the appropriate time. The chair may also ask for comments and concerns from the public relating to a particular topic, and at this time, phone lines will be unmuted. If you would like to speak, please state your name. Individuals will be allotted 5 minutes to speak or 10 minutes for a group as per our procedure bylaw. If the meeting is recessed, callers will be put on hold until the meeting reconvenes, with the exception at noon, where callers will be asked to call back in. This helps with call quality. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and may be uploaded to our website and our social media. To eliminate background noise, please mute your phone during the meeting. We also ask all attendees to mute their devices to reduce disruptions to the meeting. Everyone has a right to be present at council meetings and council committee meetings. Any attendees that are considered disruptive to the progression of this meeting may be removed at the discretion of the chair as per the MGA Section 198. We thank you for your cooperation and understanding. We have an agenda before us. Does anybody have any additions or changes? If not, a motion to approve the agenda is presented.
Also move.
Thank you, Councillor Laprise. Any questions or discussion? I'll call the question. Motion is carried. We had the minutes from the May 21st, 2024 council meeting. Did anyone note any errors or omissions?
I'll move the minutes as presented.
Thanks, Deputy Reeve Clausen. Any questions or discussion? I'll call the question. Motion is carried. We'll now recess from our regular council meeting and a motion to open the public hearing, please.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Councillor Eichert. Any questions or discussion? I'll call the question. Motion is carried. Good morning, everyone. As per Section 193 of the Procedure Bylaw 2023-03, the public hearing will be conducted in the following order: staff report by administration, presentation by the applicant, presentation by public in support of the proposal, presentation by the public in opposition of the proposal, rebuttal presentation by the applicant limited only to the comments read or heard in opposition to the proposal, and final questions of administration. We'll then close the public hearing. The applicant will have a maximum of 20 minutes to present. Any individuals supporting or opposing the proposal will have up to 5 minutes to speak, and groups of individuals will have up to 10 minutes to speak. The applicant will then have a maximum of 10 minutes to present their rebuttal. If there are any questions relating to this process, please refer to the procedure bylaw. Can administration please verify that notice of the public hearing was circulated in accordance with the MGA?
Yes.
Thank you. And are there any written submissions that are not in the public package?
For the first bylaw, no.
Thank you. And we kindly request anybody presenting to please state their name and address for the record. Good morning.
Just a question of process, being that we have a number of public hearings here. Are we going to deal with them and do the vote? Because it's going to be a lot of information to try to go back and make the vote after the fact if we got to close the public hearing to make the.
So you'd like to close the public hearing?
On each one, I think.
We will close the public hearing for each application.
Okay.
And then you're suggesting we move into the other readings?
Yeah, just to treat them all individually.
I think that's what we would do.
Just wanted to make sure everybody know what we're doing.
Through the chair, I believe that we typically open the public hearing,
close the public hearing, then proceed
Consider.
with the bylaw readings, just to kind of keep it all fresh and then proceed.
And then
to
we'll
the
come
next
back and open
bylaw.
another public hearing for
let's
the
do
next
that. Okay,
application.
thank you.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, good point. Thank you. Please proceed.
Good morning, Council. Taylor Felt with the county's Planning and Development Services team, here to present the next 4 applications on the agenda. The first application before Council this morning is a land use redesignation that proposes to redesignate 629.57 acres within Section 72220 west of the 4th Meridian from the Agricultural General District to the Direct Control District. Referring to the location map found on page 15 of Council's agenda package, the subject lands are located 7.5 kilometers northeast of the hamlet of Clunie, 2.65 kilometers north of the intersection of Highway 1 and Range Road 210, immediately east of Range Road 210. The site is home to the Tarian Brethren Church of Clunie and is developed with multi-unit dwellings, modular dwellings, a community dining facility, a church, schools, and several farm and accessory buildings, and is serviced by on-site water and wastewater servicing infrastructure. All of the development here is concentrated along the Crowfoot Creek Valley floor, which I have a larger site map here up on the screen. The balance of the lands are used for livestock and crop production, which also reflects the predominant land use in the immediate vicinity. The DC3 district offers a unique mix of residential, institutional, and agricultural uses that can provide for the daily needs of the Hutterite communities that are not supported together in the existing agricultural general district. The district was created to support the development and expansion of Hutterite communities throughout our county and is the reason for the application today. The main reason here is actually that the community, the school serving the community, which I have highlighted here on the screen, located in the northwest corner of the developed area, has been deemed unfit for occupancy. Under the current land use designation, institutional uses are not permitted. And so before the county can accept a development permit application for a new school, a moved on school, or repairs to the school, the land use redesignation will need to be approved. Other anticipated developments in the short term include a newer renovated worship facility and community childcare facilities. Servicing is provided by means of a private well and private sewage treatment system. The colony has undertaken significant work to update and improve their PSTS system recently. Inspection and approval of their new wastewater system will be required prior to the issuance of any further development permits at the site, and the community will need to enter into a mutual access agreement with the county for the wastewater infrastructure and the pipelines that are crossing portions of an undeveloped government road allowance. The proposal generally aligns with the best practices for sustainable community development as outlined in the county's regional growth management plan and the intended developments of and goals of the county as noted in the municipal development plan. The cultural circumstances surrounding the requirement of the uses in the DC3 district are intended to ensure that a certain quality of life is maintained and that cultural and social aspects are available for these communities within the county. And while some cultivated land may be removed from the production as part of the future institutional developments and expansion, the DC district will allow the colony to continue with their agricultural pursuits in the future. Landowners and interested parties within a 1 mile radius of the site were notified of the application, and again in advance of today's public hearing. No objections were received by the county. That concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Any questions regarding the report? If there's no questions, would the applicant like to present? Is there anyone from the public who would like to speak in support of the proposal? Is there anyone from the public who is opposed to the proposal? Are there any final questions for administration? Motion to close the public hearing for bylaw 2024-01. Thank you, Councillor Kester. Any questions or discussion? I'll call the question. Motion is carried. And we will resume our council meeting for contemplation of readings of the bylaw. Council's wishes. Councillor Laprise.
I'll move that council moves first reading of bylaw 2024-01, this being a bylaw for the purpose of amending land use bylaw number 2016-01 to redesignate plus or minus 254.73 hectares plus or minus 629.57 acres of section 72220 west of the 4th from Agriculture General District to Direct Control District, as shown on this attached Schedule A and Schedule B forming part of this bylaw.
Thank you, Councillor Laprise. Any questions or discussion? I'll call the question. Motion is carried. Council's wishes for second reading.
I'll move that council moves second reading of bylaw 2024-01.
Thank you, Councillor Bigger. Any questions or discussion? I'll call the question. Motion is carried.
I'll move that council grant permission to hold third and final reading of bylaw 2024-01.
Thank you, Councillor Eichert. Any questions? I'll call the question. Motion is carried unanimously.
I'll move that council moves third reading of bylaw 2024-01.
Any final questions or discussion? I'll call the question. Motion is carried. We'll now open the public hearing for bylaw 2024-03. A motion?
I'll make the motion that council moves to open the public hearing for bylaw 2024-03.
We will follow the same process for this public hearing as we did for the previous. And can administration verify that notice of the public hearing was circulated in accordance with the MGA?
Yes, I can.
Thank you. And were there any written submissions not in the public package?
Through the chair, there.
Just pardon me, just need to vote on that motion
Oh,
for opening the public.
That would be a
Thank
good
you.
idea.
Sorry.
Thank you. I'll call the question. Thank you, CAO Henderson. Thank you. Motion is carried. Now we'll confirm that public hearing was circulated or notification was circulated.
I can confirm that, yes.
Perfect. And were there any submissions not in the public package?
Yes, through the chair, there were two submissions that were received within the deadline, but not included in the digital package. And I'm happy to read them out if council would like. They were also circulated to council in advance of the public hearing.
I think just to be consistent with prior process, we have read them into the record. If you could proceed with that, thank you.
For sure. I'll read them in the order that they were received. So the first one's dated May 24th.
Now, sorry to interrupt. Previously, we had used the scanner so that they were also showing on Teams. Is that
I can do that.
possible? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, there we go. So the first submission here is dated May 24th, 2024. It was received by the county's office on May 27th, 2024. The letter reads, Dear Taylor Felt, this letter is to inform you that I have an interest in the consolidation and allocation of the road allowance adjacent to my property in Chancellor, file number RC 2024-002. I will attend the public hearing on June 4th, 2024 at 9 a.m. in the Wheatland County Chambers. Thank you very much. Signed, Margaret Schmidt. The second submission here is dated May 28th, 2024, was received by the county office June 3rd, 2024. And the letter reads, Hi Taylor, please pass the below submission points along to support Susan's application to acquire the laneways. Currently, Susan owns 6 titled properties adjacent to the laneways that have been unused for decades, 5 of which would fall well under the minimum requirement for development, and 1 which has an existing property on it. Currently, under the latest LUB, for all future development, I believe minimum of ½ acre would be required. Through being able to acquire the requested portions of laneways, sections of these would allow a new plan to be created, reducing the total number of undeveloped lots Mrs. Wade currently owns, which now exists into developable parcels. This requested acquisition would not only allow for the future development of housing within the hamlet eventually, but also allow for an increase in tax revenue for the county, as they may eventually be classified other than raw land value, but as a parcel with a dwelling. Based on the estimated total land inclusive of the lanes and subject to survey, of course, there should be 2 to 3 developable parcels now being created. Currently, the laneway sits as they always have since we moved out to Chancellor, almost a decade ago and many years prior. They are simply grass with no defined borders that blend into Mrs. Wade's and Mrs. Margaret Schmidt's properties. Removal of these as laneways would not restrict any unadjacent property owners' ability for access, as they have been used as such, and free flow around the hamlet is still fully in place on the avenues. A reduction for the county would also be in place to not have to maintain these unusable lands with upkeep and time to do so. We've had discussions with Mrs. Schmidt, our adjacent property owner, who has also agreed to purchase a portion as noted. Through these discussions and based on the plan submitted, both adjacent property owners would be more than pleased to acquire their portions and maintain them, allowing for the best interests of both parties, as well as full and complete access to their properties would still fully remain in place once redefined through a new survey plan and attached. Thank you. Signed, Susan Wade, May 28th, 2024.
Thank you very much. And again, just a reminder, we kindly request that anyone speaking please state their name and address for the record. Please proceed.
This application proposes to close an undeveloped laneway allowance within Block 2, Plan 550 AM in the hamlet of Chancellor. The application is being made by the owners of Lot 1 through 11 and Lots 26 through 39, which are all owned by the same person. These are the lands immediately south and west of the undeveloped laneway. The intent is to purchase the lands and consolidate them with the adjacent properties. Through the circulation process, administration heard from the owners of lots 12 to 25, who has expressed interest in purchasing and consolidating a portion of the laneway with their lands as well. If the closure is approved by council and the Minister of Transportation, the 2 owners have agreed in principle as to how the lands will be divided and consolidated with their parcels. Legal and physical access to those lots adjacent to Block 2 will not be impacted by the proposed closure. The closure also does not conflict with any statutory and non-statutory plans, and this laneway allowance has not been identified in the county's road construction plan and is not required as part of the future road network. Notice of the application was circulated to adjacent landowners within a 1 mile radius and then again in advance of today's public hearing. The application was also circulated to utility providers and Alberta Transportation for their review. No easements were requested by utility providers, and Alberta Transportation has indicated they have no concerns with the proposal. There's an existing drainage swale that bisects the undeveloped laneway, moving north-south. However, the swale is protected by way of an existing registered easement, which is held in the county's name, and it will be carried forward to the newly created titles as well. One letter of objection was received, and it can be reviewed on page 44 of the agenda package. And with that, administration is recommending that council move first reading of bylaw 2024-03, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions regarding the report? Would the applicant like to present? Is there anyone from the public who would like to speak in support of the proposal? Is there anyone from the public who would like to speak in opposition to the proposal? Any final questions for administration? Motion to close the public hearing for bylaw 2024-03.
I'll move that council moves to close the public hearing for bylaw 2024-03.
Thank you, Councillor Laprise. And we will resume our regular council meeting. Council's wishes. Sorry, I'll call a question on closing the public hearing first. Thank you, everybody. Motion is carried. Now we will resume regular council. Council's wishes for first reading.
I'll move that council moves first reading of bylaw 2024-03, this being a bylaw for the purpose of closing to public travel and creating title for a plus or minus 0.12 hectare, which is plus or minus 0.29 acres, portion of public roadway described as Area A in Block 2, Plan 550 AM, within Southwest 352421 west of the 4th, as shown on the attached Schedule A forming part of this bylaw.
Thank you, Councillor Laprise. Any questions or discussion? Yep, go ahead.
I would just like to say that I'm just happy to see that the two immediately adjacent property owners are working in collaboration on this project, sounds like. And so I'm really happy to see that some cooperation is happening there. It's good.
Any other questions or discussion? I'll call the question. Motion is carried. And just for the public, just in terms of process, now that council has approved first reading, our administration will provide the original bylaw and road closure package to the province, to Alberta Transportation and Economic Corridors for ministerial review there. And then if ministerial approval is granted, the bylaw will come back to council for consideration of second and third reading. We will move to the bylaw consideration, bylaw 2024-04. Motion to open the public hearing.
I think we have to close this one.
No, we closed it. We voted on first reading, and then second and third will come back after ministerial approval.
Thank you.
We'll move that council moves to open the public hearing for bylaw 2024-04.
Thank you, Councillor Laprise. Any questions or discussion? I'll call the question. Motion is carried. And can administration please verify that notification of the public hearing was circulated as per the MGA?
Yes, I can.
Thank you. And was there any written submissions that were not part of the public package?
Through the chair, not for this application, no.
Thank you. And again, we'll just kindly request that anyone speaking, please state your name and address for the record. Please proceed.
This application proposes to close a road allowance for Range Road 195, which is located approximately 3.25 kilometers south of Dallam, immediately south of Township Road 270. This application has been made by the owner of Block 1, Plan 87108339. These are the lands immediately west of the developed portion of Range Road 195. I realize the image I have on the screen here is tricky to see the parcel. I have a better visual here of the lands by which the applicant has made the proposal. The applicant's intent is to purchase and consolidate the lands with theirs, which will accommodate several non-compliant structures that do not meet the minimum development setbacks of the county's agricultural general district. Future development on any of the surrounding lands is unlikely to make use of Range Road 195. This is mainly due to the configuration of the lot immediately west and the presence of a drainage channel and seasonal wetlands on the lands immediately east. The closure will, however, create a panhandle lot if approved, which the municipal development plan does not support, as they do raise concerns with respect to safe access for emergency vehicles, increased risk of landowner disputes, and limited future development potential of those lands. However, given the highly irregular configuration of Block 1, which I'll pull back up on the screen here, administration believes that closing and consolidating the roadway and portions of the undeveloped road allowance will actually allow for more functional use of that land. The closure will not impact the legal and physical access to a public roadway by the surrounding landowners. This portion of Range Road 195 and the remainder of the undeveloped road allowance have not been identified in the county's road construction plan and is not required as a future county road network. Notice of the application was circulated to landowners within a 1-mile radius and then again in advance of today's public hearing. The application was also circulated to utility providers and Alberta Transportation for their review, and no easements were requested by the utility providers, and Alberta Transportation has indicated that there's no objections or concerns from their perspective. One letter was received by the former landowner immediately east. Those are the lands on the west side of the highway here, who indicated their interest in purchasing a portion of that road allowance as well if it's closed. Since then, the landowners actually sold the property. Administration has spoken with the new landowner, though, and explained the process, described the application, and that the new landowner has actually indicated they're not interested in being involved in the process. And with that, administration is recommending that council move first reading of bylaw 2024-04, and I'm available to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions regarding the RFD? If not, would the applicant like to speak? Are there any members of the public who would like to speak in support of the proposal? Are there any members of the public who would like to speak in opposition of the proposal? Any final questions for our administration? Hearing none, a motion to close the public hearing?
I'll move the council close the public hearing bylaw 2024-04.
Thank you, Councillor Eichert. I'll call the question. Motion is carried. We'll now resume our regular council meeting. Council's wishes for first reading. Councillor Laverson.
I'll move that council moves first reading of bylaw 2024-04, this being a bylaw for the purpose of closing to the public travel and creating title for a plus or minus 1.2 hectare, plus or minus 3.17 acre portion of the public roadway described as Road Widening Plan 021-2190 and part of government road allowance within the northeast of 312619 west of the 4th, as shown on the attached Schedule A forming part of this bylaw.
Thank you, Councillor Larson. Any questions or discussion? I'll call the question. Motion is carried. And similarly to the last bylaw, this will be sent to the Tech Minister for approval, and then we'll come back to Council for consideration of second and third reading. We'll move to bylaw 2024-11. Motion to open the public hearing.
So moved.
Thank you, Deputy Reeve Clausen. I'll call the question. Motion is carried. And can administration please verify that notice of the public hearing was circulated in accordance with the MGA?
Yes, I can.
Thank you. And were there any written submissions that were not included in the public package for this bylaw?
Not for this bylaw, no.
Thank you. And again, we'll just ask any members of the public who would like to speak to please state your name and address for the record. Please proceed.
This application proposes to redesignate a 7.5 acre portion within Northwest 9, 2526 west of the 4th Meridian from the Agricultural General District to the Community Service District in order to facilitate a boundary adjustment that will allow for the expansion of the Lyalta Community Club in the future. Referring to page 66 in Council's agenda package, which I have up on the screen here, the subject lands are located immediately east of the hamlet of Lyalta, 300 meters east of the intersection of Range Road 264 and Township Road 252, and immediately south of Township Road 252. The predominant land use in the immediate vicinity of the site includes community service, hamlet residential, country residential, and agricultural uses. The Lakes of Muirfield Area Structure Plan is located immediately west of Range Road 264, and the Homesteads of Lyalta ASP is located immediately north of Township Road 252. The Lyalta Community Club is located on Lot 1, which is in the northwest corner here, and it's developed with a community hall, 2 baseball diamonds, a playground, and several accessory buildings. The club wishes to acquire the additional lands to allow for the expansion of the facility and the development of an outdoor hockey rink. Lot 1 is also serviced by private on-site water and wastewater infrastructure, and access is available via 2 existing approaches from Township Road 252 to the north. Lot 2 is comprised of 3 non-contiguous pieces of land. That portion of Lot 2 north of the canal is accessed by 3 existing approaches off of Township Road 252 to the north. The northern portion and the center portion of Lot 2, that's the piece immediately south of the canal, are connected by a crossing over the WID canal there. I'm highlighting the land bridge right here, just south of Lot 2A. The link over the canal explains the configuration of Lot 2 with that little piece of land that follows the canal boundary there, which will ensure access for farming equipment is maintained in the future. The proposal aligns with relevant statutory and non-statutory policies and will allow the Lyalta Community Club to expand and diversify the recreational opportunities available to residents in the area. The expansion aligns with several guiding principles identified in the Municipal Development Plan, which recognize the importance of recreational opportunities in the county's hamlets and the positive impact gathering places like this have in their communities. Landowners and interested parties within a 1-mile radius of the site were notified of the application, and again, in advance of today's public hearing, and the county has not received any objections related to the application. That concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Any questions for administration? Would the applicant like to speak Would any members of the public like to speak in support of the proposal? Would any members of the public like to speak in opposition of the proposal? Any final questions for our administration? Hearing none, perhaps a motion to close the public hearing?
Also move.
Thank you, Councillor Bigger. I'll call the question. Motion is carried. We'll now resume the regular council meeting. Council's wishes.
I'd like to move that council moves first reading of bylaw 2024-11, this being a bylaw for the purpose of amending land use bylaw number 26-01 to redesignate plus or minus 3.03 hectares or 7.5 acres within Northwest 9, 25, 26 west of the 4th from agricultural general district to community service district as shown on the attached Schedule A forming part of this bylaw.
Thank you, Deputy Reeve Clausen. Any questions or discussion? I'll call the question. Motion is carried. Council's wishes for second reading. If you can just turn your microphone on, please, Councillor Kester.
I'll move second reading.
Thank you. Any questions or discussion? I'll call the question. Motion is carried. A motion for permission for third reading.
I'll move that council grants permission to hold a third and final reading of bylaw 2024-11.
Thank you, Councillor Bigger. I'll call the question. Motion is carried unanimously.
I'll move that council moves third reading of bylaw 2024-11.
Thank you, Deputy Reeve Clausen. Any final questions or discussion? I'll call the question. Motion is carried. We will move to bylaw 2016-01. Motion to open the public hearing.
So moved.
Thank you, Deputy Reeve Clausen. I'll call the question. It's different. Yep, necessary. Motion is carried. Good morning, everybody. We are opening the public hearing for bylaw 2024-13. Can administration please verify that a notification of the public hearing was circulated as per the MGA?
Yes.
Thank you. And were there any written submissions that were not in the public package?
No.
Thank you. And again, we'll just remind everybody to please state your name and members of the public to please state your address for the record. Please proceed.
Good morning, Jessica Russell with Planning and Development Services, presenting bylaw 2024-13 to amend Wheatland County's land use bylaw. The application proposes to amend parts 9.27 of the land use bylaw to allow for the development of a public park within the hamlet of Lealta. The application proposes to add Parks Minor as a permitted use in the Direct Control District 7, Cell 1, allowed only on the land legally described as Lot 223, Block 11, Plan 221-1277. Parcels located within the lakes of Muirfield along Muirfield Boulevard in an undeveloped area of the hamlet. Adjacent land uses to the parcel are undeveloped within the Cell 1 designation. The parcel is accessed by Murfield Boulevard and undeveloped right-of-way and may be serviced by municipal systems. This amendment would allow for the development of a permanent playground in the Lealta community. The previous tot lot located on a golf course easement along Murfield Boulevard was removed due to safety concerns with the playground equipment. The proposed park includes low-intensity recreational equipment and structures for playground and open area. The proposed park is expected to have minimal traffic and noise impacts to adjacent lands. The proposal is consistent with the relevant plans, policies, and bylaws. Pursuant to Section 3.10.2.2 of the MDP, the county shall continually explore the acquisition and reuse of land for new parks and recreation facilities. The proposal is consistent with the described residential land use of the Lakes of Muirfield Area Structure Plan. The proposed park is subject to the Phase 2 architectural controls where applicable. Through the proposed amendment, the park may be accommodated in the land use bylaw in the Direct Control District 7, Cell 1, through the Parks Minor Amendment. A notice of public hearing was sent in accordance with the MGA. Administration did not receive any submissions. Administration recommends approval of bylaw 2024-13 as per the motions provided. This concludes the presentation, and I'm available for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Would the applicant like to speak? Would any members of the public in support of the proposal like to speak? Would any members of the public in opposition of the proposal like to speak? Does anyone have any final questions for our administration? Hearing none, a motion to close the public hearing.
Also move.
Thank you, Councillor Pigger. I'll call the question. Motion is carried. We'll now resume regular council meeting, consideration of first reading. Deputy Reeve Clausen.
Move that council moves first reading of bylaw 2024-13, this being a bylaw for the purpose of amending land use bylaw 216-01 to add parks minor as a permitted use in the Direct Control District 7, Cell 1, allowed only on the land legally described as Lot 223, Block 11, Plant 221-11277 for development for a park as shown in the attached Schedule A forming part of this bylaw.
Thank you, Deputy Reeve Clausen. Any questions or discussion? If not, I'll call the question. Motion is carried. Council's wishes for second reading.
That council moves second reading of bylaw 2024-013.
Thank you, Councillor Reichert. Any questions or discussion? I'll call the question. Motion is carried.
I'll move that council grants permission to hold third and final reading for bylaw 2024-13.
Thank you, Councillor Laprise. I'll call the question. Motion is carried unanimously. Council's wishes for third reading. Deputy Reeve Clausen.
I'll move that council moves third reading of bylaw 2024-13.
Thank you, Deputy Reeve Clausen. Last chance for questions or discussion. I'll call the question. Motion is carried. We will move to agenda item 2.16, consideration of bylaw 2024-16. Good morning.
Good morning, Council. Michael Borgon here from administration to present bylaw 2024-16 regional emergency bylaw. You will find the report on page 87 of your agenda. The recommendation from administration is to move all 3 readings of bylaw 2024-16. Just for some history, in 2019, Wheatland County passed the first regional emergency management bylaw, which included a regional committee, agency, and a planning group. Through an annual housekeeping review, it was determined that the agency and the planning coordination group were duplicating effort, and it was determined that the agency could complete the duties of the planning and coordination group, and that the planning and coordination group can be removed. The review also recommended adding the City of Chestermere to the bylaw, as they are currently in our REMP and our partnership agreement. On page 88, there's a table which includes the proposed changes for your review. That concludes my presentation, and I'm available for any questions.
Thank you. Any questions regarding the bylaw? I just had a couple of questions and I'm just finding them.
Okay.
On page 93, oh, sorry, no. Sorry, page 94 under 4.1A. And it's a minor detail, but do we want it to read at least 1 member as an alternate, or should it just be 1 member as an alternate? Because I think later in the bylaw, it just referenced that there could be 1.
So we did base this on the other municipalities as well. So we took their bylaw and we made sure that we kept it consistent. So this would be the wording very similar. As long as we're appointing 1 member and 1 alternate, which is the requirement of the committee, I think we're okay with that wording. However, it is possible to make that textual amendment, no problem.
No, I'm good with that. And there certainly may be situations where it is beneficial to have more than 1 alternate. So that's great. And then a question maybe more to CAO Henderson for 4.1E. Can we just ensure that that review is put into that like annual calendar for council, just so that we know that we're meeting that requirement?
Yes, we can.
Just checking, I think that was it. Oh, the other one is just a question. So in section 10, the bylaw does reference that we repeal and replace our previous bylaw. And I noticed the next agenda item is repealing the previous bylaw. Do we need, if this bylaw repeals the previous bylaw, do we still need to do 3 readings to repeal that bylaw?
Through the chair, yes. So the 2013 bylaw was not repealed.
Oh, that's the 2013.
Correct, yeah. So that's a housekeeping item. It is unrelated, but it's just an old bylaw for housekeeping that wasn't repealed.
Okay, no, that's perfect. I was trying to reconcile whether we have missed doing that like for other ones, but I see we're automatically repealing 2019, but that's okay, perfect. Wonderful. Any other questions or discussion? I actually just have one final comment. I noticed the bylaw references financial responsibility for the coordinator position. And my understanding is operationally the town of Strathmore and Wheatland County have been sharing that responsibility. Do we note that in that tracker that tracks financial support for the villages? Because the villages also benefit from the coordinator.
Through the chair, no, we don't, but we can start.
If we could add that in, I think that would be good. And then with the addition of the City of Chestermere, are they also cost sharing on that coordinator position?
Through the chair, yes, they are. It's now split 1/3, 1/3, 1/3.
Perfect. That's what I thought I recalled, but just so that all of council is aware. Wonderful. Thank you. Any other questions or discussion? Council's wishes.
I'll move that council moves first reading of bylaw 2024-16 regional emergency bylaw, being a bylaw of Wheatland County to establish a regional emergency management committee and agency.
Thank you, Councillor Priest. Any questions or discussion? I'll call the question. Motion is carried. Council's wishes for second reading. Councillor Laverson.
I'll move the council move second reading of bylaw 2024-16.
Thank you, Councillor Laverson. Any questions or discussion? I'll call the question. Motion is carried.
I move that council grants permission to hold third and final reading of bylaw 2024-16.
Thank you, Councillor Bigger. I'll call the question. Motion is carried unanimously. Council's wishes for a third reading.
I'll move that council move third and final reading of bylaw 2014-16.
Thank you, Councillor Eichert. Any questions or discussion? I'll call the question. Motion is carried. We will move to agenda item 2.17.
Good morning, council. Michael Borgon here again to present bylaw 2024-17. You will find the report on page 100 of your agenda. The recommendation from administration is to move all three readings to approve bylaw 2024-17 and to appeal bylaw 2013-13. In 2019, Wheatland County passed the very first regional emergency management bylaw, which included a regional committee, agency, and planning group. At that time, bylaw 2013-13 should have been repealed. Section 63 of the Municipal Government Act empowers council to pass a bylaw which omits or provides a repeal of a bylaw, which is presented before you. This is a housekeeping item and will have no operational impacts. That concludes my presentation. I'm available for any questions.
Thank you. Any questions? Council's wishes.
The council moves first reading of bylaw 2024-17, being a bylaw to repeal municipal emergency management bylaw 2013-13.
Thank you, Councillor Kester. Any questions or discussion? I'll call the question. Motion is carried. Council's wishes for second reading.
I move that council moves second reading of bylaw 2024-17.
Thank you, Councillor Bigger. Any questions or discussion? I'll call the question. Motion is carried.
I'll move the council grants permission to hold third and final reading of bylaw 2024-17.
Thank you, Councillor Laprise. I'll call the question. Motion is carried unanimously.
I'll make the motion that council moves third and final reading of bylaw 2024-17.
Any questions or discussion? I'll call the question. Motion is carried. Thank you so much. Yeah, let's take a 5-minute break. We will reconvene at 10 a.m. Good morning, everybody. We'll call the meeting back to order and we'll move to agenda item 2.21, notice of motion from Councillor Kester. So we have the notice of motion in our package. And it is a notice of motion to be brought forward at the June 18th council meeting. So I think question to administration, it just needs to be on the agenda. We don't need to do anything with it today.
That's correct. No discussion on the matter, just that it is, and it will be brought forward to the next meeting. If Councillor Kester would like to speak to it to explain a little bit of it, that would be acceptable as well. Thank you.
Councillor Kester, do you wish to speak to the notice of motion?
I can wait.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. We'll move to agenda item 3.1, Reeves report. My report starts on page 112. A couple of things I would like to highlight. It's always an exciting day when we get to present the CURB recipient checks. A huge thank you to the board for their work in evaluating all of the submissions and helping prioritize those and the recommendation they make to council. We certainly appreciate the work of that committee. This year, I am proud that Wheatland County was able to support 56 projects in our region totaling over $432,000. And it's incredible impact when you look at that. CURB program to date has funded over $5.3 million, provided $5.3 million of funding to 561 projects. So significant impact within the region. I also want to highlight an exciting day that we had with the CGC groundbreaking event. I think it's important for us to recognize that this is going to be a significant economic stimulus in terms of job creation, both during the construction phase, but also during operations. But as well, CGC has been significantly investing in our community even before they had shovels in the ground, providing donations to multiple civil society groups throughout our region. They are an incredible just corporate partner in our community and have made that known since they decided to locate in Wheatland County. With that, I will move that my report be approved as presented, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Councillor Kester.
Yes, yes, you reported on May 28th a meeting regarding WHMB governance concerns with the Government of Alberta Ministries of Housing, Community and Social Services and Municipal Affairs. Could you give us a report on that meeting, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So CAO Henderson, Deputy Reeve Clausen, and myself met with multiple representatives from both ministries. We outlined the concerns that we had included in our letter previously, specifically concerns regarding the governance of the board and also concerns regarding the governance review that was conducted. We did provide some supporting details and evidence of those concerns to both ministries. The ministries indicated that they will be following up with communication to council and some further work with administration on clarifying some of the legislative, the legislative framework for housing management bodies. Additionally, they did indicate that housing management bodies are reviewed routinely on I don't remember if they said what term, but on a regular basis. And they did indicate that they had expedited the review of Wheatland Housing Management Body, and they provided some clarity just on the scope of that review, and that it does go beyond just operations, and it can encompass other elements of the housing management body, and that they would be following up with both the housing management body following that review, and then they would also circle back and follow up with council at that time as well.
Just to follow up with that, did the province say when they've done a review, like province-wide review, when that would be reported?
They did indicate that should be coming out shortly. They didn't have a date. No, but they did anticipate, I think they said even potentially this week.
I got a date for you if you want it.
Yeah, I think we'll just, I know the minister is speaking live right now. I'm not sure if that's capital announcements, but they did anticipate it would be very soon. They did say that what would be coming out of that would be somewhat high level, but that there would be recommendations within that report that will be further details will be developed by the ministry based on the report.
June 24th to 26th.
Okay. For the Lodge Panel Review report?
Mm-hmm.
For the Lodge, I think Councillor Bigger was asking about the Lodge Panel review report, I believe, right? Or were you asking about the review of Wheatland Housing Management Body? Yeah, the Lodge Panel review. Yeah, so
Operational review ensures Alberta Housing Act and its regulations are being adhered to, as well as provide with housing management bodies with best practice guidelines. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic and recent amendments to legislations, operational reviews were on hold for the past few years and have been confirmed for June 24th to 26th. And our team will come out.
sorry, just to clarify, were you talking about the province's review of WH? Okay, that's,
The other review.
so
The one
Councillor
that-
Kester speaking to, so the province will be reviewing the Wheatland Housing Management Body
Okay.
at the end of June 24th to 26th. The Lodge Panel review, we were told to anticipate to be coming out shortly.
Okay.
And then that will be further developed by the ministry. They didn't give a timeline for that, but they said it may appear to be somewhat high level in terms of the report, but that they will continue working on that.
Okay.
I don't know if you have anything to add or if I missed anything.
Just wanted to let people know that there was the meeting was requested by the ministries and it was invitation to us, in case anybody was asking why nobody else was there. They invited us specifically, so if they wanted anybody else there, I guess they would have asked. So.
Yeah, I felt it was a good meeting. It was the minister. We did have some technical challenges in the beginning, but there was good engagement from Minister McIver, and Minister Nixon was there initially, but then had to step away. They were sitting as well. Actually also MLA DeYoung had joined us as well. I think that was the only MLA. But we will keep council updated if we receive further correspondence. Any other questions regarding my report? If not, I'll call the question. Motion is carried. We'll move to agenda item 3.2.
Thank you. My report's on page 114 of the package. This month mostly has been a lot of meetings with Energy from Waste. We've in 1 month time, we've reviewed 7 vendors, had initial meetings with them, and have had a board meeting to let them know what's going on. And then basically we're comprising to try to get it down to 3 to move it forward. We've been tasked by the board to basically get another option, if possible, done by the end of the year. So we've been diligently going all on Zoom meetings. There's lots of information, lots of, I can see why now that the whole executive's involved instead of just a small committee with this process. And I can see why before it's taken quite a while. There's a lot of information there, and it's not just, how can I put it? If you're looking at one thing and thinking it's an easy solution, they come back with 5 different solutions and different ways of providing the service, anything from small on-site operations to large. So, but we're having another meeting this week to basically compile all the information and then try to push it forward. I will say that the Energy from Waste, all the information that we've gathered is invaluable for all the municipalities for the amount of money that we've spent on it over the years. It's really good information about landfills and everything, and it kind of brings everybody together and gives you a really good idea what everybody has the same problems. So, but moving forward, I think there's going to be a way to move forward with this, but we'll see how it goes. So if there's anything else on there, I think it's been covered. I'd be happy to take questions. If not, I'll move as presented.
I just have a question on energy to waste. You plan to have it down to 3, and then those 3 will submit pricing or?
So, yeah, so we'll have it down to 3, and then there'll be non-disclosure agreements with each one of those, because we'll have to go on a little bit further. The key things that we are looking for is how much is it going to cost, the gate fee. with financing, without financing, because that is the make or break that we know. We know what our landfill costs are now. If it's going to be north of 150 a ton or something, we know it's not going to fly. So we're trying to get it as, and those are the key questions. And how's the financing coming? You know, how that affects the project, things like that.
And all your suppliers or all the bidders, they've all got like licensed technology so that, you know, like we're not going to be a pilot project that, you know, 6 months down the road, they shut her down because it fails all the regulatory and environmental stuff.
So Energy from Waste has, one of the mandates to us, was proven technology. We have no interest nor time to do a pilot project. And that was very specific. And some of these vendors may have that in mind or may not, right? So, but it's been very clear back to them. That's not what we're here for. It'd be nice. I mean, there's lots of good ideas out there, but we don't have the time, money, or the effort to try to prove a technology. Which limits to, there's only a few. We've learned that there's more in Canada than we thought. Because this stuff is pretty secretive. Like, it is strange how it's such a, but it's the public eye, right? Environmental concerns and all that kind of thing. But there's been some that have been operating in Canada that this board wasn't even aware of until a week ago. So.
Burning barrel?
Not burning, yeah. There's some that are expanding. It's pretty interesting. Really interesting. But we're really hoping to be able to bring a solution to Alberta and to the area as a large scale, and then I think it's the future of it. So. No taxpayer money, just gate fees.
Any other questions for Deputy Reeve Clausen? I'll call the question. Motion is carried. We'll move to agenda item 3.3, Division 1 Councillor Report.
My report is on page 115 of the package. I don't have too much really to add to what I've got there. On housing, we received 2 bids from roofing contractors, and we've agreed to move forward with one of them. We're hoping to do a strategic planning session. Would like to do it in June, but we'll have to see about availability of a consultant to help us with that. Yeah, I appreciated coming to the Wheatland County Welcome Back Safety Day barbecue for staff. That's a fun event to go to. And the curb presentations, like you said, great opportunity to see some of our leading community members come to keep those facilities operational. That's always good. So, and also I attended the Wheatland Crossing School grad ceremony. So yeah, lots of great events this month to celebrate our residents and the good things that they're doing. That I'll move my acceptance of my report for May. If there's any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Thank you, Councillor Laprise. Any questions? I do want to thank you for attending the graduation ceremonies. Deputy Reeve Clausen and I were not available, and we appreciate you being there. And as well, I just wanted to echo your comments, and I meant to emphasize that with the CURB grants, just how grateful we are for all of those organizations and how they take that funding from the county and really leverage that into some incredible programs and facilities within our community. So thank you for emphasizing that. If there's no other questions, I'll call the question. Motion is carried. We'll move to agenda item 3.4, Division 3 Councillor Report.
My report is on the server. I was excited to be a part of the CGC groundbreaking ceremony, and very proud for our area. but also for the fire hall and the fire volunteers. The hall looks great. I just, you forget that, you know, when I first got on, we were fighting and fighting and fighting to get a fire hall for Carsland and had to go back to the table quite a few times before we got one that could suit us financially and our community suit it well. And they've done a really good job. And it's amazing that they can hold two major events in there, and it doesn't. It's a great venue, and just want to thank them all. That's a lot of work. With that, I'll just move my report as presented.
Thank you, Councillor Bigger. Any questions? I'll call the question. Motion is carried. We'll move to agenda item 3.5, Division 4 Councillor Report.
My report is on the server on page 118. I think a lot of stuff has been covered. I want to thank staff for on the open house we had at Cheadle regarding the Township Road 240. It brought the community, brought the hamlet of Cheadle together and brought the farmers in the area together. There was a really good turnout. And I've been told that they're going to start, they should be able to start in the ground in beginning of 2025. So, I mean, it'll help everybody involved. And I want to thank staff for that. And I also want to thank staff on May 9th. We had ICC with the town of Strathmore. All the work the staff has done behind the scenes to make that process go so smoothly. The way it started out was less than ideal, but I think the kinks have been worked out, and that is strictly on the staff working that hard. So thank you very much for that. I think everything else has been covered, so I will move my report. If there's any questions, feel free to ask.
Thank you, Councillor Eichert. Any questions? Call the question. Motion is carried. We'll move to agenda item 3.6, Division 6 Council Report.
Yeah, my report's on the server. Everything's been talked about except the Rosebud seed. They had a meeting on the 27th. Plant is probably done operations till harvesting time. So there'll be routine maintenance and patching holes and making it work, but they had a good year, just an average year. And if there's no questions, I'll move my report.
Thank you, Councillor Kester. Any questions? I'll call the question. Motion is carried. We'll move to agenda item 3.7, Division 7 Councillor Report.
My report's on page 120. Pretty well everything's been discussed already, except that Councillor Kester and I also attended the Wheatland Crossing graduation ceremonies. So if there's no questions, I'll move my report.
Thank you, Councillor Laursen. Any questions? I'll call the question. Motion is carried. We'll move to agenda item 4.11, CAO report.
Good morning, Council. Brian from administration. On page 121 of your agenda package is my monthly report for May 2024. One thing to note outside of my report is that I had a meeting with a couple ADMs from the province and the CAO of the WHMB on May 15th. So that the meeting notes, a couple councillors had inquired about that meeting, so I included the meeting notes, a summary of those meetings on page 124 of your agenda package. As always, the council resolution tracker is in the report as well. It starts on page 126 of your agenda. I had also requested some clarity on the requisitioning ability of the WHMB, so we're still waiting for the province on an answer on that. If there's any questions, please let me know. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for CAO Henderson? If not, perhaps a motion to accept his report as presented.
So moved.
Thank you, Deputy Reeve Clausen. I'll call the question. Motion is carried. We also had the council resolution tracker, a motion to accept his information.
I will so move.
Thank you, Councillor Eichert. Any questions or discussion? I'll call the question. Motion is carried. We'll move to agenda item 4.12.
Yes, good morning, Council. Brian from administration again. On page 134 of your agenda package, the 2024 Seniors Week Declaration. Administration was a little bit late on this one. My apologies, this one did slip to the back of my inbox. Administration has prepared the communication as always and just kind of ready to go after Council's authorization if granted. If there's any questions about this, please let me know. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll move that in honor of the past, present, and future contributions of the seniors of this community and throughout Alberta that we declare June 3rd through 9th, 2024 to be Seniors Week in Wheatland County. Any questions or discussion? I'll call the question. Motion is carried. And we'll ensure that that's shared on our communication channels as well. Wonderful, thank you. Let's move to agenda item 4.13.
Yes, good morning, Council. Brian from administration again. On page 139 of your agenda package is just a housekeeping item, and that is just to update policy 5.1.2. That's just to align with the changes that were implemented at the previous council meeting last month. And that was, we just have to update the compensation just so that the two policies match. I believe there was a couple other minor amendments, and those amendments can be found in updates in green. Anything taken off or deleted has been highlighted in red. If there's any questions about the amendments to this policy, please let me know. Thank you.
Thank you. Council's wishes.
I'll move that council approve amendments to policy 5.1.2, appointed non-elected committee members remuneration effective November 1st, 2023.
Any questions or discussion? I'll call the question. Motion is carried. We'll move to agenda item 4.14.
Yes, good morning, Council. Brian from administration again. Administration received a request from Councillor Larson, which has requested appointment to the Drumheller and Area Foundation committee for a committee appointment. Administration did put together just some brief history on this one and included the email from Councillor Larson and the bylaw that was provided to Councillor Larson. The bylaw starts on page 151. The request from Councillor Larson is on page 147. And then the last meeting, which was this was discussed at, was July 4th, 2023. And administration went to YouTube and just downloaded the transcript and just put it in here just for council's information. So anything further on this report, I'll let Councillor Larson to speak to it, and administration will conclude our presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, CAO Henderson. Take it away, Councillor Larson.
Well, first of all, does anybody have any questions? So the bylaws say that there's supposed to be an elected official appointed. I've been on this since, I don't know when, a while. And at the last meeting that I was at, that's when the bylaw came up. And yeah, the rest of this, the bylaw and the rest of the stuff are in this email. So if you have questions, let me know. Otherwise, I should be ratified as the member for that Drumheller Area Health Foundation Committee.
Councillor Larson, can you point to the section of the bylaw that indicates elected official should be appointed?
There's supposed to be the way they explained it to me is there's supposed to be a member at large and a councillor on it.
So it looks like the articles clearly state in 2.1 that membership shall be open to any individual that resides within the foundation district who may, at the option of each of the member municipalities, be either an elected councillor or an appointed member at large of each of the following member municipalities. And then 2.1.1 says County of Wheatland, 1 member. So, and I understand that we have previously appointed Mary Marshman, who had expressed an interest in serving as a representative of Wheatland County on the foundation. She has served for several years. I believe she served concurrently with Gary Crapson when he represented Wheatland County, and then when he stepped back from his service to the board, we did appoint Mary Marshman as a Wheatland County representative. So I believe we are meeting our membership requirements within the articles by having Mary there, and then, or sorry, Mrs. Marshman. And then council has previously discussed that this could be brought forward. I'm trying to recall if we discussed it again at the organizational meeting. Any other questions or discussion? I know we have discussed this multiple times. Deputy Brief Clausen?
Yeah, from my recollection, this was discussed at organizational, and I just think of some other committees that have been and come and gone here. CRAS would have been one. There's some other ones, Bow River Basin Council. We don't really have anybody that goes to these things. They want us there all the time. I mean, there's lots that want us to attend, but we have to suit the needs of our county. And I mean, go back, look in the, I was thinking about this. Strathmore, we've never sat on anything health-wise with Strathmore District Health. I don't even know if they have a board or whatnot, but yeah. There's lots that want us there, but we have the decision as council to decide whether or not we put somebody there. I also, just the email, I try never to throw administration under the bus because I don't think it was an administration fault. I want to be clear on this. It was something that council decides, it's not administration.
So for me, I guess I'm not opposed to having somebody sit on the foundation, but I do think it should come to the organization meeting and be ratified at that point.
Yeah, so just for clarification, we do have an appointed member at large, Mary Marshman. So we do have a representative. My understanding and having through conversations with previous counselor for Division 7, which is geographically most proximal to Drumheller. I believe legendary counselor Ben Armstrong also served on this for many years, if I understand correctly and recall correctly. But it wasn't through, or it wasn't remunerated through council. It was just part of his public service. And so very grateful for his service there. And to Mary Marshmans and to Councillor Laverson, if you have been attending as a member at large or as in whichever capacity, grateful for your representation on that board as well. If there's no other discussion, we could accept for information. I do actually just have one sort of larger issue to raise related to this, and it's just a conversation around potential liability as a member of a foundation. I noticed in the articles, I'll just go to the page. I guess my first question is if we could just ensure that we have a council resolution, question to administration, a council resolution. And I do recall Mr. Copson coming to council, and I believe it was likely around that time, but just ensure we have a council resolution regarding the signature on behalf for this special resolution. And then I noticed that there is I'm getting there. Under section 8.2, there is borrowing powers within the articles, as well as the ability to issue debentures. And so I was just wondering if administration could look into any potential liability that Wheatland County may have as a member of the foundation. Obviously, typically my understanding, and I haven't looked at the recent financials of the foundation, but is that they would be fundraising and generating funding for incredible projects within Drumheller Health Centre and additional things outside of the scope of what Alberta Health funds. They do incredible work, and we have recognized that previously, but I just want to ensure that we're fully understanding any responsibilities of our membership in the foundation. So perhaps we could, I would actually move to direct administration to bring an RFD back with further information about the foundation and the responsibilities that Wheatland County has through our membership. And I want to be crystal clear that I fully support the work of the foundation and fully support our membership. I just want to really fully understand the agreement that we are a named part of. Any questions or discussion? I'll call the question on that. Motion is carried. Council's wishes.
I'll move that council accept the email from Councillor Larson and the report on the Drumheller Health Area Health Foundation Committee request as information.
Thank you, Councillor Bigger. Any questions or discussion? I'll call the question. Motion is carried. We'll move to agenda item 4.15.
Yes, good morning, Councilor Bryan from
Sorry,
administration.
just a moment, CAO Henderson. Councillor Kester?
Just a question. Will this be coming up at organizational meeting? Will the report be done and everything?
I'm assuming the report about the foundation would come back. Maybe when that comes back, we can direct what we do with the organizational meeting. Or we could have an additional motion to ask administration to include it in the 2024 organizational meeting. Okay. So move to direct administration to include Drumheller Health Foundation representation on the 2024 organizational meeting agenda. Any questions or discussion on the motion? I'll call the question. Motion is carried. My apologies. Now we will move to 4.15.
Yes, good morning, Council. Bryan again from administration. On page 169 of your agenda package is an RFD regarding the Strathmore Wheatland Chamber of Commerce request for contribution. So the SWCC has been working in the community for a number of years. The county has historically provided some donations to assist in their operations. So what administration has done is provided those historical donations in this RFD. It's at the bottom of page 169. 2023, we did not provide a donation, and I think that we're just going through a little bit of a transition period there. I know that they have previously done events, the BEAs, which is the Business Excellence Awards, and I don't think they had hosted them in 2023. And they had done some trade shows as well, and I think they're just kind of working on revamping some programs there. Our economic development officer, Jamie Cramble, met with the SWCC president, and he spoke very highly of them, which is great. And administration does support this proposal of providing a contribution for $3,500. If there's any questions about the report, please let me know. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for administration?
I don't have any questions, but I would like to have them, if they could come as a presentator or have them talk to us about I understand they're going through some more changes. When they get that put together, if we could ask them to come. And I'd really like to see some, I'm not against the 3,500. It's just that I'd like to get more behind our businesses and try to help them. They have a good benefits plan that is offered. If we could, I just had some ideas that for every business or farmer or, farming is a business, but that kind of goes in or signs up for their benefits, that we maybe subsidize or help them out through that, through kind of promote them to maybe get out there and advertise their benefits plans a little bit more. Things like that. I like the idea of their trade shows, but I kind of wanted more of a trade show where it's actual trades. The last couple that I've been to are more like markets. I'd like to see them do like home and garden, something different in the trade, make it a little bit more bigger and more for businesses. Yeah, but they could present all that when they came. Do we invite, or do we just approach them?
Through the chair, administration could present an idea or a proposal to the chamber to come to the public presentation committee, which I think the next meeting is in April or August, and have them present. And anything that you or council would have questions on, perhaps we could provide that to them before in writing, just kind of the understanding of what kind of presentation they may want to put together for council to help better understand their operations. Or provide insight on what would be beneficial
What
for
we've been
Wheatland
talking
County
about, yeah.
perspective.
And I'm just curious if the BEAs are still going on or not, or if it's something they've, because it is, the business awards was nice for the county businesses that, you know, they were nominated. It was something that was very regional. We gotta still try to be regional. Yeah, if we could have them come back to explain what parts of the county and what kind of regional programs or regional strategies they have going forward. Thanks.
Just to build on Councillor Bigger's comments, I really like the idea, and I like the idea of inviting them to present to the Public Presentation Committee. I noticed that the date on their draft strategic plan is October 2023. So it might be good if administration could coordinate with their leadership and just see if they would maybe like a year, say, of their new strat plan. They do reference several KPIs that they will be monitoring. They didn't give a time frame for that monitoring, but if it, like how frequent it is, but it might be prudent just to give them, even August might be good, that's close to a year, since they had the draft strategic plan. And then if we perhaps just ask them to specifically report to the detail that they can or the granularity that they can for Wheatland County outcomes within the SWCC, that can help us evaluate those funds and how those are being leveraged to support Wheatland County businesses. Would that work well? So maybe a motion, we can contemplate the motion for the funding, but perhaps a follow-up motion after that, directing administration to coordinate them presenting to the Public Presentation Committee, specifically on outcomes related to KPIs around Wheatland County businesses. And then I liked CAO Henderson's idea of if there are questions that we could provide them in advance of the Public Presentation Committee, then they can be prepared to bring those back as well. So it could just be, okay.
I'll move that council approve a contribution of $3,500 for the Strathmore Wheatland Chamber of Commerce.
Any questions or discussion on the funding?
I would prefer that be put back until we find out what they're going to use the money for. Like, I understand, like, as far as I know, the town of Strathmore contributes $10,000 a year, but I believe in the $10,000 a year, the chamber is tasked with a couple of projects. So they understand what they're getting for their money. What are we getting for our money? We're putting $3,500 in. And what is it being used for? This is a business, still a business organization. And if we just give money without having an explanation of where that money's going to, then I believe that we open ourselves up for every other organization out there just to ask us for money. I think there has to be some responsibility on the chamber to tell us what they're going to do, what they plan to do with the money. And I prefer that this goes back. And then the ask could be done once they do their proposal.
My consideration of donating the money was takes money to plan, and I feel that with me stepping off the board, the money's saved for the Wheatland County for this year, because they do come back every year. This is not an annual contribution. This is a yearly one. That I would put forward that I could have, it's saving the county my per diem for going to those meetings, hoping that they would go forward on some of the suggestions I had made that when I put my resignation in. That this is kind of the money that's saving the Wheatland County already.
I think in the report it talks to says they publish a monthly newsletter. It says arranges events such as trade show and business excellence awards. So I'm assuming they're going to do them. Host regular coffee connections and assist with county specific activities as needed. So I do think that there's a partnership there that we should support.
I understand Councilor Reichert's request. I was thinking of similar lines, but they're going to come. And like Councilor Bigger said, she's stepped off and there's some per diems and stuff that aren't there anymore. And they're in transition. So I would just, I'll support the motion and then we'll just reevaluate it and see how it goes forward. And I do like as a business, they need to focus on that, the benefits for business, because a lot of them have no idea. And that is something that is a service that is, it pays for the membership itself right away. If you know, for that, utilizing that.
Any other questions or discussion? I'm torn too. Part of me would like to hear a presentation from the chamber directly and how they would leverage these funds like Councillor Reichert referenced. But I am willing to support the motion, but perhaps in the letter with the funding or the letter reaching out to facilitate the presentation to council, we could just outline specifically that we will be looking for KPIs. I do note in one part of the strat plan, it does reference monthly monitoring of those KPIs. So if we could maybe alert them now that if they could start monitoring some Wheatland County specific metrics so that we can evaluate those and then obviously be cognizant of that on an ongoing basis. I think the chamber has a lot of opportunity and can do some really good things for businesses in this region. And I do support that. And I see Councillor Bigger's rationale that if you like your rationale that the funding is better spent on actual programming or supportive projects than through your representation for governance on the board. So I will support this, but I will be looking for very clear outcomes for Wheatland County with regard to the funding. Any other questions or discussion? I'll call the question. Motion is carried. I'll make an attempt at a motion. I will move that we direct administration to facilitate a presentation by the Strathmore Wheatland Chamber of Commerce at the next public presentation committee and to request that the chamber executive be prepared to present Wheatland County specific KPI metrics and that administration coordinate council questions prior to the presentation. Yeah, I'll try. Just the last part. And coordinate council questions prior to the presentation. Like coordinate them going to the chamber.
Just a question to council through the chair. Would it be possible to put up a time frame on the questions from council, perhaps 3 weeks ahead of time, just so we can get it to the chamber and allow them time to get the presentation ready for the public presentation committee if there is something to put that in, just so that there's a timeline. I believe the next public presentation committee is in August, so it would give council almost 2 months to get their questions together. Thank you.
So I didn't include dates just because for administration to coordinate that, you could set dates and then you could also, because you're facilitating with the chamber, there may be some reason why, say that August date didn't work and they can't come until the next one, but absolutely, like implicit within that, if administration can just set a deadline that you need, even if you need the questions a month before so that it gives you time to compile them and send them to the chamber, that doesn't have to be in the motion, but. So move that council direct administration to facilitate a presentation by the Strathmore Wheatland Chamber of Commerce at the next public presentation committee meeting and request that the chamber executive be prepared to present Wheatland County's specific KPI measures and coordinate council questions prior to the presentation. That's perfect. I wonder if we should just take next out. I'll just amend my own motion, just in case that date doesn't work with the chamber executive. So I'll just amend to take out the next before public presentation committee meeting. Any questions or discussion? Is everybody clear on the motion? I think it's not working just to show up on our screens, but we'll just remove the word next. Is everybody clear on that? I'll call the question. Motion is carried. And then lastly, there was some discussion and administration, you can advise if you need a motion, but to coordinate with the chamber on helping to basically amplify their communications. And I like Councillor Bigger's idea, even to maybe try and do some agricultural specific so that our agricultural producers, maybe we can focus on raising awareness for the benefits program and some of the advantages of the chamber. Would you like a motion for that, or is that something?
We can probably just do that internally.
Perfect, thank you. It's an excellent point, and it really is they have some great programs, and that benefits one is excellent. I try and share it, with producers when I'm chatting with them every once in a while, but it would be good to do more public communication and raise awareness. Thank you for that. We will move to agenda item 4.16.
Yes, good morning, Council. Brian again from administration. On page 183 of your agenda package is a request for decision for the WHMB mediation request. So this report was prepared by administration, and the actual correspondence from the CAO of the WHMB is on page 186 of your agenda package. And in that correspondence, it does note that the WHMB board did pass a resolution to direct their administration to send this letter to Wheatland County. And so the letter is in here. It is a mediation request. I believe it is to help facilitate a better relationship between the two parties. The descriptions in the letter were pretty vague, so I just thought I'd bring this for requests and accept as information. If council does have any questions about the report or the request, please let me know. Thank you.
Council's wishes.
So I have a question, I guess, so it was recommended a year ago. And then just through a review, but now just coming to council now, do they feel that, I'm not sure where the housing board was kind of, why they didn't do it like as soon as the review recommended it, or if in case I'm reading it wrong, maybe I misunderstand how it's being read. Does anybody have a question or answer for that?
I guess I can take a stab at it. I think generally the board has been working through all of the recommendations outlined in the report, and this is maybe a larger one that just was discussed at the last meeting or a recent meeting. Yeah, it's something that came out of the governance review that was done, and they recommended that we try to come together to resolve some of the lack of collaboration and cooperation between the two parties. I think it's a good idea. I mean, we all know there's issues there, and I think if they're extending this opportunity, I think we should take it. I think in their letter they talk about engaging a third-party mediator. So I think if we were to agree to this, it would go back to the board to discuss who we would want to, or maybe it would be a joint decision who to hire, and so there'd be some ongoing details to work out, I suppose, but I think we should accept in principle.
Yeah, I'm not opposed to it, but I want to see some, what its purpose, framework, timelines, structure, etc. And there is an organizational meeting coming up. So if this process started in June, we have a summer break, would it actually be completed by the time an organizational meeting, or should this be tasked with the new appointed members of WHMB and give them a goal to work out with fresh set of eyes and fresh, back on the board, or there's somebody new on the board, or, because it is a short time away. To organizational comes up fast, and this is a large project. So I'd like to see something, administration maybe getting some of that framework and things, maybe write a letter and ask timelines and things like that, because I don't think it's, just top of my head, I don't think it's achievable to finish this before organizational.
Councillor Larson.
So just to add to Councillor Priest's comments, there was a number of recommendations that came out of the board. This stuff had to be prioritized. This is when this one came up. I don't think it's particularly helpful to say why it's come up now and not earlier. I think this, and as for the Councillor Klassen's stuff, first, Wheatland County has to agree to participate in this before there's no point in developing an agenda and deciding what needs to be done if both parties don't want to participate in it. So I think this council needs to decide if they're going to participate. Then we will look, as the letter says, picking out a mediator that's acceptable to both parties, and then we can come up with an agenda and outcomes and deliverables and timelines.
Any other discussion?
I'm going to be honest, I'm hesitant. We've done mediation here as counselors, and I didn't see great results. I just, it's just my gut feeling. Yeah, so I'm hesitant.
I'm not against this request. So, and the reason is, I think that there has to be an openness on both sides to look at what the issues are. And I think that when they come back with, when the Wheatland Housing Management Board comes back with their suggestions on what, we will get a time frame out of that. And at that point in time, we can look at Councillor Klassen's idea of whether or not this can be done, whether it should be tasked to us or not, and that discussion could be made. But I will be voting for this.
So just to put this within some context within the governance review itself, the governance review references sort of one specific issue that was directly related between Wheatland County and the board. And it says, once this incident has been put behind the board, it would be in everyone's best interest to consider third-party mediation to build a better and stronger working relationship at the board level. Further context that I'm considering related to this request is around the concerns that we have with the governance review report itself and the outcomes of that. I'm also mindful of our conversations with the ministries and the upcoming provincial review, and would like to see the outcome of that and have some further correspondence and communication with the province on those outcomes and on how the province is going to address concerns around the governance. Also cognizant of Deputy Reeves' comments around timing and, we do have a couple of council meetings prior to our summer break, but I know we have a fair amount on our plate right now, and to add this just before summer is maybe not optimal in terms of engagement. I wouldn't mind potentially tabling this consideration or this request until we have further follow-up with the province. I'm open to it as well. I think there could be potential merit, but like Councillor Bigger, I also have concerns because we have invested taxpayer dollars in mediation previously where the outcomes were maybe not followed through on. And so I'm just mindful of that ROI on the expense. Certainly open to it if we believe that there is a possibility that it will be helpful. And I think, if we give this a little bit of time to see where things go over the next couple of months, I wouldn't mind seeing this come back. I'd be okay with it coming back following the organizational meeting or even just in the fall. For me, it depends somewhat on the timeline that we don't control, which would be the province's follow-up from their review. And I don't have a timeline on what that would look like. I don't believe they communicated that. Deputy Reeve Clausen.
Yeah, just thinking about this too. That review may include some kind of this kind of thing as well.
Yeah, potentially.
It could possibly. So I'm not opposed to it. I just think the timing right now, let the province do their work that they said they're doing. It's June 21st to 24th to 26th. And then go from there.
I think I will make the motion that council accept the mediation request from Wheatland Housing Management Body and request more information about the details. And when we receive that, the housing board doesn't meet until the end of June. We're not going to get anything before that, likely. So then we'll get details and then be able to determine whether it's over the summer or whether it's a September type timeframe. But I think we should accept this. So sorry, my motion. That's not all a motion. Accept the mediation request and request more information about the details. That's my motion.
Questions or discussion? I'm not prepared to support the motion at this time. And it's not because I'm opposed to the idea of a mediator engaging. This was framed, sorry, let me go back to the language. Some of the comments in the governance review final report referenced interpersonal conflict. For me, the interpersonal or the personality dynamics between the board and our council are of less relevance than the governance. And for me, I would anticipate that the Wheatland County concerns that have been conveyed to the board over the last 5 years have centered around governance. There may be other factors that come into consideration in terms of how those have been addressed or that type of thing. But for me, the root of the challenge is around the governance issues themselves. I would be optimistic that as the governance issues are addressed and as we get clarity from the province around their legislation and the framework within which the housing management body operates, and as that oversight, to a large extent, this is not our responsibility. Where it becomes a concern of mine as Reeve of Wheatland County or Division 2 councillor is that requisitioning authority. And so wanting to ensure that obviously that's being executed aligned with legislation, and obviously other governance considerations influence requisitioning. So for me, I would like to have those core issues addressed first and then see where we go. I think we have demonstrated we are working collaboratively with Wheatland Housing Management Body as a council. We have provided letters of support. We have, I believe we funded the governance review or a portion of it. Maybe that wasn't for the housing board, maybe that was WRC. Okay, sorry, I recalled incorrectly. But we have provided letters of support. We have heard presentations. We've been very open to that. But we also find ourselves in the challenging position of being the elected officials representing the taxpayers that are responsible for this, but who don't have direct sort of lines of accountability to the board itself. So I appreciate the motion. I will not be supporting it today. I don't want to shut down the potential for mediation in the future. So I'm mindful of, of that. But for me, I would like to have more information around how our concerns with the governance review report and the governance of the board will be addressed by the province, and then contemplate any potential future actions that can be constructive for residents of Wheatland County in terms of housing needs. Any other questions or discussion? Yep, absolutely. We can do a recorded vote. Administration did indicate that the visuals of the vote may not be displaying on our recording, so I will verbalize that. I do want to be clear that by not supporting the motion, it's not that I don't support mediation, it's the timing of it and the unknown outcomes of the potential expense. Any other questions or discussion? Deputy Reeve Clausen.
I'm just trying to think of a question before I vote here and I'll ask the board members who can answer. There's been a number of board members appointed by the county that have left. Has the board made any effort to open the dialogue? It's been frustrating, and I think that's carried over because obviously these are the councillors that are appointed to this board, and the board made many effort to have constructive discussions instead of, how do I word this? If someone had opposes something, it's never accepted and it's pushed, and to the point of frustration. And that's what not what democracy is about. So I don't know, has there been any internal things?
Here's what I would like to say about that, and that is that this is for both parties. I think the housing body has things to learn as well. And I think, this is my most difficult board to sit on, but I see that the cause is great. So I remain on the board. But I am hopeful that by participating in mediation, both sides can come to some kind of collaborative center point. I think we are pretty far apart in terms of what we believe good governance is. So I hope by having this mediation, everybody can learn a little bit about what, how members of a board should be able to ask questions during a board meeting and not feel like they're being a nuisance to the board by doing so. There are things that need to be learned by both, by all. So I do think that it could be, I hope it will be beneficial. And I do think the timing could work out still to satisfy the desire to wait for provincial feedback So I hear what you're saying, that we've had a number of people sit on this board and have to leave because it's proven frustrating. But I think this is a step, I hope, towards making the situation better.
I'm still voting for this, even though in the back of my mind, this thing sort of sets up as a political move. And it's very possible that once we get the information back from the Wheatland Housing Management Board about who they want to do for mediation, what the scope of the mediation is, what the direction of that's going to be, that I may very well be against going forward at that stage. But this is this is just sort of one step in a required to fix, in my opinion, a broken board, having served on that board. So I'm still going to vote for it, even though that if you were to say you're going to vote against it, there's going to be some sort of political ramification on it. I can understand why you wouldn't want to vote for it. So, but I will vote for the mediation going forward, but I will be very, very cognizant of what the mediation, what the process, what the mediation wants to accomplish, and if it's not what I believe is the right thing for the county, I will be voting against it at that point.
I agree with Councillor Eichert. I think we can agree to accept the mediation request. And once we see the details of it, if we feel like this isn't going to satisfy what we see as the issues, then yeah, I would say definitely at that point we say no, we're not. This isn't going to satisfy what we see as the issue. So that's why I support this motion.
I want to support the motion. Would Councillor Laprise, would you, and this might be more than a minor amendment, but rather than accepting the mediation request, because I feel like that's a commitment before we have details around cost or scope, or when I think about mediation, I typically think of mediation as there's some sort of disagreement where, like you said, there's polarity in the positions of two parties, and a mediator is going to help settle on some sort of potentially center ground or compromise or a solution that maybe meets the needs of both parties. I have not seen communication from Wheatland County that is counter to anything at the WHMB. I've seen concerns expressed, but it's not necessarily, to me, I am mindful that the province formed housing bodies to take advantage of, and this is my understanding, economies of scale to provide for housing needs for vulnerable people in Alberta. I think the county agrees with that. I think WHMB agrees with that. We have had some concerns regarding specific processes. A mediator is not going to be able to help with something like requisitioning. It's a legislated, mandated, there is a legislative framework that outlines how it is to be done. Our request historically has been just for it to be aligned with that legislation and for the body to follow that. I would not mind further if there are elements that I am missing within the scope. I'd like to understand that. I would like some more information before I consider accepting the request. But I am open to perhaps some language around engaging on more information about what that would look like. And that could be done, I agree. It could be done in tandem or concurrently with the province's review and as we work to address those governance concerns. I don't know if there would be any openness to considering an amendment where we're not necessarily accepting the request without further details. And if there's not obviously, like that's totally okay.
So you're saying to consider, we would consider the mediation report, but would like more information with details on procedures or details, just details.
Yeah, like to engage, to establish further details, potential cost, scope. What is the, like, I am curious, the letter wasn't super clear. Mediate the ongoing conflict. So I don't necessarily see conflict. I see requests that have come to council. I have seen actions by the housing board that have, from my perspective, caused issues, but I don't see ongoing conflict. We have a letter of support that is in place for a project. But I am certainly open to moving towards a solution, but I think we need to address, from my perspective, we need to address the governance concerns first and then see where things go. But I am open to concurrently exploring what the scope of mediation would entail.
Just through the chair, just some notes from administration. Probably when council's considering this request, I think that it's important to understand the topics that are being requested to be mediated. It should be kind of outlined why it's important to be mediated as well, and kind of the desired outcome that council and the board wishes to achieve, and kind of have those mutual kind of goals together. Also, timelines is a very important thing as well. I did kind of mention a thing about cost in the request for decision as well. Ultimately, the county would have to pay a portion of it, whether that be through requisitioning or through a different arrangement up front. And those details are kind of not clearly outlined in the request. So it would be prudent for council to understand the topics to be mediated. I think it's not, I think the request just needs to be a little bit more defined on what topics. I think that's a very, very important thing. Clearly, there are some things working between the board and the county, and maybe some stuff that isn't working so well. But just to understand exactly what needs to be mediated is probably the first step. So probably a little bit of clarity on it would be good for both parties. Thank you.
Okay, how about if I withdraw that motion? And I move that council direct administration to send a follow-up letter to Wheatland Housing Management Body requesting more information on the suggested mediation, including topics for discussion, desired outcomes, timelines, and costs.
I can fully support that motion. Councillor Kester?
I wasn't going to say anything. The letter was written in that way so we could come together and agree what we want to mediate on. The board did not want to set the parameters. They wanted to work with the county for the parameters. So I think Brian started down the right process. We got to do this, this, and that. And administration getting together is good, but it should be more of a focus on collaborating on what the outcome is. Does that make sense? The board did not want to see as this is our mediation process and we're going to dictate. We wanted to consult.
Thank you, Councillor Custer. That's good information, and I think that that can be done through some mutual communication. I like the motion because it can bring back more information to council. Perhaps the housing board can put forward some ideas around their vision, and I like everything that you outlined, the desired outcomes, the topics of discussion. I think those are all important considerations. Any other questions or discussion? We can do a recorded vote, you bet. I'll call the question. Oh, sorry. Motion is carried with Link, Eichert, Clausen, Bigger, Kester, Laprice, and Laursen all in favor. We will move to agenda item 4.21.
Good morning, Council. Corey Adamson from Corporate and Financial Services here to report on the Corporate and Financial Services Report to Council for May 2024, found on page 187 of your Council package. I don't have too much to add to the report, except actually on page 190 here of the report, just a bit of a typo here that I wanted to clarify. And that is, sorry, where we say created a new theme web application for the Galician Cemetery. That's actually meant to be the Rosebud Cemetery. So essentially that's just an internal tool that's being used currently, but it is like a precursor of a future public interactive cemetery plot selection review tool that we intend to do through Laserfiche. But I just wanted to clarify that typo there. And the other thing I just wanted to touch on a little bit here is our asset management. So we've signed a new agreement with a vendor to assist in an overarching asset management plan. We're going to call this the Master Asset Management Plan, which is going to give us a lot of base information on all of our core asset data. And then from there, we'll be able to spider into a lot more detailed asset management plans for each of our core assets. So. And that concludes my report. I'm here for any questions you might have.
Any questions regarding the report? High level question, the timeline, and I realize it's a massive undertaking for that master asset management plan.
That's a very good question. Through the chair, it will be about, the estimates are about 8 months for that. So hopefully we'll get it by the end of the year, but it'll be otherwise early 2025. So
that's fantastic. That's impressive. Any other questions? If not, a motion to accept his information.
Also move.
Thank you, Councillor Bigger. I'll call the question. Motion is carried. We'll move to agenda item 4.31.
Good morning, Council. Sherry Barris with Administration to provide the May 2024 Community and Development Services Update, which is found on page 192 of the agenda package. And I don't have anything additional to add at this time. And that concludes my presentation. I'm available for any questions.
Thank you. Any questions regarding the report?
Thank you. We're talking about the pathway at Muirfield and the crossing of the road there. I've been asked several times about the budget, and I'm just gonna, is there anything in the budget for solar lighting for pedestrian traffic?
Through the read to council, that is being considered as part of the design package because we do have to we have to follow the highway standards for crosswalks with lighting. So that is being considered, and it will be taken out of the overall cost for the lineal footage or meter for the pathway, but it is being included into the cost of the pathway at this time.
Yeah, if it, I think it's really important that we put some kind of lighting up there for pedestrian crossing there. It is drops from 100 down to 50, and then we're got pathways and stuff. So if it doesn't fit the budget, please bring it back to council. Yeah.
Any other questions? A motion to accept as information?
So moved.
Thank you, Deputy Reeve Clausen. I'll call the question. Motion is carried. We'll move to agenda item 4.32, RCMP reports to council.
Good morning, Council. Sherry Bars with administration again to provide the 2024 first quarter RCMP reports for Strathmore, Drumheller, and Bassano, which begins on page 203 of the agenda package. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you. Any questions?
I'll move that council accepts the reports from the Strathmore, Drumheller, and Bassano RCMP as information.
Thank you, Councillor Brees. Just one comment on this. I have been getting increasing communications just around rural crime, again, from ratepayers throughout the county. I know specifically in Carsland, there was some specific issues. In some areas of Division 2, there's been some specific issues cropping up. I wonder if administration might be able to reach out to the detachment commanders and just see if there's even some communications we might be able to do. One of the messages that I try and convey to ratepayers is to please report all crime, even if they think there's a low probability that there would be any outcomes. And as well, it does help just the RCMP with both that intelligence-based policing, but also with their metrics for things like funding and that type of thing. To know, and even to report suspicious, vehicles or people or that type of thing. Sometimes there's a hesitancy because I was chatting with one ratepayer and they said, oh, but what if I report it and it's just a neighbor I don't know? And that is a risk, but it's not like when you report something, the RCMP, come in blazing. They monitor and they integrate that into their intelligence. So just if administration could reach out, I think I'm hoping we don't see this continue to escalate, but anything that we can do to contribute, both for ratepayers communicating with RCMP, but also just around, I know our peace officers have spoken before around CPTED and some things that we can do. So just maybe if we can increase that a bit. Thank you. Any other questions or discussion? I'll call a question. Motion is carried. We'll move to agenda item 4.33.
Good morning, Council. Michael Borgon again from administration, here to present the Wheatland West feasibility study. You'll find this report on page 245 of your agenda. The recommendation from administration is to remove the $100,000 placeholder in the current operational budget and also remove the $4.5 million capital placeholder in the 2025 capital budget. Wheatland County passed a resolution, CM 2022-0956, to establish a placeholder for a potential feasibility study for a new fire hall in the west part of the county. This stemmed from the Fire Capital Committee meeting of September 20th, 2022. At that meeting, we just discussed potential future need. brought it forward to council, and you guys approved the placeholder. Since that placeholder was established, Wheatland County Administration conducted an internal assessment and evaluated the existing facility at Wheatland West. It was determined that the facility meets the current service requirements. If demand increases in the future, we're looking maybe a 5 to 10 year timeline for that. The existing facility has the ability to be upgraded to meet the future demand of the area. On page 246, I just have some highlights of Wheatland West. So the building was constructed in 1999 on a 1 acre parcel. It's a 5,000 square foot 4-bay fire hall that includes a basic kitchen, a meeting room, and a training area. It houses 1 engine, 1 tender, 2 bush buggies, and a half-ton utility vehicle with 18 paid on-call firefighters. The fire hall is located in Fire District 9, and the map is on page 246. So that's the area that hall covers. As far as service levels, the service levels are established by Fire Services Bylaw 2019-06. Wheatland County firefighters are basic exterior fire suppression firefighters. The current bylaw does not require a minimum response time, and that is a common requirement in rural volunteer fire departments. In 2023, Wheatland West average response times are, so for the entire district, depending just on an average, it's 19 minutes, 45 seconds. And then I did just choose one area, which was Origin Business Park. And Origin Business Park is the most westernly point that Wheatland West responds to, and that's an average of 22 minutes and 5 seconds. We have 2 automatic aid agreements. One of them is with Strathmore. They respond to all of our structure fires and MVCs within the district. This is a reciprocal agreement, and there's no fee for service. So we also respond in the town for that. Calls are relatively equal monthly. The other one is with Rocky View, and that's for the Origin Business Park. There is an hourly fee for service. That's also a mutual aid, so we bill them hourly. We haven't responded often there, and they respond a handful of times every year to Origin Business Park. That's an hourly fee based on their fees and fine schedule. On page 247, it outlines the current condition of Wheatland West Fire Hall. Currently, there are no building or environmental concerns with the facility. If you go to page 247 to 249, this goes into detail regarding the future population of Wheatland County. In table 249, the table, on 249 shows the potential increase based on various growth rates. You can see it's not very rapid currently. So again, in the near term, this facility can be accommodated, and it can accommodate our fire service levels. Administration will continue to monitor it as the development proceeds. In summary, administration is recommending that the $100,000 placeholder is in the current operational budget is removed, and the $4.5 million capital placeholder is removed from the 2025 capital budget. I'm available for any questions. That concludes my presentation.
Thank you. Any questions?
I'm glad that staff are looking at this and evaluating it, because I believe it was more of an idea from council back when we saw some development coming and development in town, and thinking, is it going to be fit? But you've evaluated it and say it's fine. I'm sure you take into consideration growth in Strathmore and their love of putting up streetlights, traffic control devices. So I guess that's fine. So yeah, it's very rarely that administration comes and asks you to take something out of a budget. I'm looking for a pig, but I'll be happy to make the motion that council accepts the Wheatland West Firehouse feasibility study update report as information and removes the $100,000 budget as placeholder. Approved through Council Resolution CM 2022-09-56 for the Wheatland West feasibility study and the $4.5 million budget placeholder for the 2025 capital budget.
Thank you, Deputy Reeve Clausen. Any questions or discussion?
Love the report. Just a question. What is our response time? Would the response time to Muirfield be?
It's very similar to that. It was a little bit longer. I believe I can get you that. I did pull that number for you. It's a few minutes longer than the one to Origin Business Park.
keep in mind that a lot of those have sprinklers in the house because of that.
Right. Well, I understand. The
think they all do.
reason being this, I really, really love this idea of this mutual aid, because I can see down the road, like the problem with having a volunteer fire department is the volunteers. And you just can't take a fire department, a fire hall, and put it out sort of out in the middle of nowhere and expect people to get to it. So, I'm just brain shooting, but if we were to, down the road, 10 years down the road, if we were to have, say, a fire hall in Muirfield, and they can staff it out of the volunteers from the residents of Muirfield, and they can cover the backside of like that end of Rocky or of the county, cover Muirfield, and then they could go out into Delroy and those areas into Rocky View, because Origin Business Park makes the most amount of sense being covered by Langdon, even though it's a line on a map and it's a different county. It just makes more sense because they have the people, they have the volunteers, they have the fire hall, and they're the close proximity. I'm pretty sure that even if there was a fire at my place, that the people in Rocky View out of Langdon will probably get to that same amount of time as it takes Strathmore. So I just want everybody, if you can just keep your eyes open on for the mutual aid stuff. I do not think that it is imperative that the county has to have its own equipment to cover sort of like a fee for contract service. I think is a really good idea, and it just makes everybody synergy so much more better. So I love what you guys are doing. I love the fact that you've got a mutual aid agreement with both Strathmore and Rocky View, and keep up the good work.
Any other questions or discussion? I do just want to thank administration for your thorough review. I think it was a really good indication how you can take your internal forces and obviously save that $100,000 on having an external consultant do an analysis. And I would agree that the analysis was thorough. I also appreciated the commitment to continuously monitoring this for the future. And I anticipate that historical population growth trends may not be indicative of future growth potentially. But I think that we can be nimble and responsive to those changes. I think Carsland was a good example of how we could really efficiently stand up a fire hall in a pretty timely and cost-effective manner. So I think if we did see increased demand or it makes sense in the future, I think we have that ability to be responsive to that and address that. And I fully trust in administration's ability to monitor that situation with all of our fire departments. And yeah, just echoing the comments about the increased capacity that we build in this region by having those mutual aid agreements that you've negotiated. I think it does benefit the entire region and all of the ratepayers, both business and residential. So thank you for all your work on this. Any other questions or discussion? I'll call the question. Motion is carried. We'll move to agenda item 4.41.
Good morning, Council. Brad Bullock presenting the May 2024 Transportation and Agriculture Department report, which can be found starting on page 252 of the agenda. Just a few items to highlight. One additional item that Council maybe want to be aware of is there was a bridge that was found recently that has a pile that needs to be repaired. It's located on Range Road 232, just east of Rockyford over the Serviceberry Creek. So that is a bridge that's going to need immediate repair. the county is planning a speed reduction and a lane restriction, but the bridge will remain open during the repairs. How long will the repairs take? Through the Reeve, I'm not sure right now, but I can get that information and get it back to council. The Township 215A reconstruction has started. It started on May 27th. That one is anticipated to take 4 weeks to complete. There will be lane restrictions in place during the construction, but the access to the Johnson Island will remain open throughout the process. On to page 253, Wheatland County did tender out our water servicing operational contract. That contract was awarded to Rocky View Utility Corp, and they began operations on June 1st. Wheatland County has also started the public facility master plan, which would look at the current conditions and potential future requirements for the county facilities, including the administration building, but more focused on the public works yard. And that also includes the new property that the county acquired to the north of the current public works yard. And that land transfer closed, I think, in April. Also, for council's information, the Shelter Belt and Eco Buffer demonstration project, just located southwest of this building, was completed, and the trees were planted on May 3rd. So if council ever wants to go and look at it, there's not a lot to look at right now, a bunch of small twigs, but eventually it'll grow up and into mature trees. That concludes my report, and I'm here for questions.
Thank you. Any questions regarding the report?
I'm just a question on process on the Rocky Ford Bridge repair. Is that work tendered, or is that done in-house, or is it if it's a certain amount of money, does it get tendered in the fact that so that everybody knows there's transparency and all that kind of stuff in the construction process?
Yes, through the Reeve. Actually, our operations manager is here. He will know more of the details of that. Might be worthwhile having come up if that's amenable to the Reeve.
Hello, Council. Cody Zimmerman with administration. All of our bridge repair work is tendered out through contract. We don't have the ability in-house to do things such as pile repairs. There's actually 2 of these bridges that have pile repairs required right now with the partial deck closures. And it's most likely that work won't take place until the fall because they need water levels to be as low as possible to get those piles cut off and then replaced with steel. So.
Yes, thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Reese.
Not a question, just kudos to our Ag and Environment group. So that Eco Buffer and Shelter Belt program, just want to say that we had a $40,000 budget to do that work. We've spent just a little bit more than $10,000, and we had $60,000 in donated products and in-kind services. So that's a huge win. I just am so happy that this project has gone as well as it did with so much external contribution towards it. So thank you to that team for that great work.
Yeah, that is phenomenal. Absolutely. Any other questions?
Through the Reeve, just one more comment, if I might. I forgot to mention that council will also be interested. The road access that was a topic of conversation previously between the county and Siksika Nation. That situation has been resolved. The road has been rerouted just to the west of where it was before, and that road is rebuilt and open for access.
Yeah, it's excellent. I appreciate the responsiveness of council and administration. And that construction was done with our internal forces. Is that accurate?
That's correct. Yeah.
Any other questions or discussion? Councillor Kester.
I don't know if this is the spot to bring it up, but Severn Dam got a lot of trailers out there. Is there anything we can do to limit the stay? Or recently informed on Crown land, you can only be there for 14 days and you have to move. And if you're not in your trailer for 72 hours, they'll take it away on you. I mean, people that live in the area don't necessarily want to see it charged. They think it's great that we have such a nice facility, but they would like to see more people feel comfortable from the community go there and use it. We had an incident last winter that we don't want to see again. And are we still thinking on something to do there?
Through the read to council, yes, we are. We followed up with the 2 campers that wouldn't leave and have contacted the province about some of the restrictions on the Crown land, and then are moving forward to look at different lease options to control how often, or leasing it out and controlling it as a campground. So we're looking at options to try to get people to not stay there for over length of stay.
Okay. So we got a nice washroom facility on one end of the lake. We got nothing on the other end of the lake. And you have to be careful where you walk on that end of the lake. Maybe we should, I don't know, look at something for over there too. But it's been quite a history there. They don't mind the camping. It's better than the graduation parties and what used to happen there. So. And people are using it and they're friendly. It's just the odd one. So thanks for looking at it. Yeah.
Any other questions or discussion?
Just got one question to administration. I've been notified that at the bottom on page 256, the bottom 2 bridge files, the provincial government paid for them. How does that work? Do we apply for all of them to be paid for by the government?
Yeah, so through the REEV to Councillor Eichert, we do apply for STIP funding every year. We typically, I think that we apply for every bridge file that we do, and we typically do receive funding. It just depends on what bridges. I did get your inquiry earlier, and one of those bridge files is in Division 5 and one is in Division 6. We're just waiting for the official correspondence from the province, kind of noting how much funding that is going to be. And I assume it's under STIP. I could be wrong, but that would be my I guess inkling. Thank you.
And when we do get notification of the funding, we do send a letter back thanking them for funding these things. Nothing happens in a vacuum. We do
through the REEV. I think we typically do. It may not come off of Wheatland County letterhead from the REEV and Council. Administration does thank AT, but it's always a great opportunity whenever you do see a minister to thank them for funding that we do receive. I know we do for some stuff, but yeah, maybe not from STIP, but we can certainly get together and see what we have some thank you letters for in the past.
Yeah, I think it can be nothing but positive, if not even at least to the MLA's divisions that are in the division, just to thank them for the work. So, because we do appreciate every bit because of the amount of money this stuff costs. So, thank you.
It actually might not be a bad idea. Like, I actually, in all honesty, was thinking about that. Let's address a motion to accept the report once questions are complete, and then perhaps if you could contemplate a second resolution directing administration to bring back information once that grant funding is finalized, and then council can give direction on how to recognize the province. Because I do think it's important that recognition and gratitude be expressed appropriately. I'm not sure that we necessarily have always done that from council. At times, I think, and it's never intentionally, but I think at times the grants are received, but the due thanks is not always given. So it's a good point. Thank you, Councillor Eichert. Any other questions regarding the Transportation and Agriculture report?
I'll move that council accepts the May 2024 Transportation and Agriculture Department report as information.
Thank you, Councillor Bigger. Any questions or discussion? I'll call the question. Motion is carried. We'll move to 4.42.
Good morning again, Council. Brad Bullock
Sorry,
presenting.
just 1 second, Giambo. Do you want to break?
I was just thinking, should we break for lunch? Because we got that in camera and correspondence after, and so we got some to do after.
Council's wishes.
I'd say a half hour for lunch would be fine, but.
Just a note to Reeve and Council through the Reeve, the lunch isn't ready yet, but
Okay.
we do recognize that this topic may take a little bit of time. So just
Instead of starting and stopping halfway through, I think it would be better just to do it. That's just me.
Okay.
I misinformed council, lunch is ready.
Let's break until 12:45.
Before we break, do I want to direct administration?
Oh, yes, sorry. We had another motion arising from the Transportation and Agriculture report. Let's address that.
And I'm not sure, I just basically, I don't want the wording is going to be horrible. What we need to do is direct administration to look into
Provincial grant funding
giving them,
and council recognition.
council recognition of provincial grant funding. So look better than
Thank you.
what I just said, I'm hoping. That was pretty ugly.
That's exactly what you just said.
How does she put in hand movement?
The massaging it.
So Councillor Eckert has moved that the council direct administration to look into council recognition of provincial grant funding.
Perfect.
Any questions or discussion? I'll call the question. Motion is carried. Let's break for lunch. We will reconvene at 12:45. Good afternoon. We'll call the meeting back to order. We'll move to agenda item 4.42.
Good afternoon, Council. Brad Bullock presenting the Redland Water Servicing Option Report found on page 265 of the agenda. I'll just read through the report so we don't miss any of the details. So starting on page 265 under the background section, in the fall of 2022, Wheatland County Administration presented a proposed plan to the residents of Redland for providing water servicing under the local improvement tax framework outlined in the Municipal Government Act. At that time, for various reasons, the residents of Redland were not in favor of the proposed plan. More recently, in late 2023 and early 2024, the Wheatland Regional Corporation engaged in discussions directly with the residents of Redland to propose an alternate infrastructure layout and an agreement and payment framework for providing water services to interested property owners in the community. This proposal involved individual service connections directly from the WRC's main transmission line, wherein the individual private property owners would assume full long-term responsibility and liability for the utility infrastructure located within the public road allowances. After a detailed review of the proposed plan, County Administration recognized that this option would place very onerous responsibilities on individual landowners and would likely create present and future unwanted liabilities and uncertainties for the county. Due to these concerns, Council directed Administration during the May 21st, 2024 Council meeting as follows: that Council directs Administration to bring a recommendation to Council for Redland water servicing. This report provides an alternative recommended option for water servicing infrastructure layout, ownership and funding, and fee structure for Council's consideration. So there is an attachment of the proposed layout to the report that Council can find just at the back of the report. The attached conceptual infrastructure layout drawing by MPE provides a proposed near-term and long-term water distribution system infrastructure build-out plan. Generally, the elements and pipelines shown in blue represent the infrastructure required to accommodate the anticipated near-term requests for water service connections within the community. The elements and pipelines shown in red depict the potential future infrastructure required for the remainder of the existing properties currently in Redland. The overall long-term plan system has been divided into two main segments to minimize the initial and overall system costs and allow for easier construction phasing of the entire system. Presently, there are 17 titled properties within the planned Redland water servicing boundary, which is depicted in blue shading in Figure 1. The conceptual layout of the water servicing infrastructure depicted in the attached drawing by MPE is based on a preliminary design that would allow enough flow capacity to service all 17 properties with a maximum allowable flow rate of 4 meters cubed per day, which is a typical flow rate that the WRC uses for its rural water connections. This is a low flow, low pressure system that would require each property to have a water tank or a cistern and an in-house distribution pump capable of supplying the peak demand water volume, flow rate, and pressure needed for the entire residence. It is administration's understanding that most or all homes currently located in Redland are equipped with cisterns and distribution pumps fed from groundwater wells or trucked in water. Under this proposed servicing option, the county would install, own, and be responsible for the operation and maintenance of the water distribution infrastructure downstream of the WRC Wheatland County point of transfer and up to the curb stop shutoff valves located at the property line of each serviced property. The point of transfer from the WRC to Wheatland County will most likely be at a flange or valve or the flange of a valve or meter near to the WRC main transmission line, with the exact location to be determined through discussion with the WRC. Installation, operation, and maintenance of water service infrastructure located on private property remains the responsibility of each respective landowner. Per the county's water and sewage servicing bylaw, each property with a water service connection will be required to install a county-issued water meter near where the main line enters the residence. For the flow regulated distribution system for Redland, property owners will also need to install a county-issued flow restrictor. This requirement will need to be added to the county's bylaw in a similar form as what is currently in the bylaw regarding water meters, but specific to Redland. Property owners would purchase these items from the county when they open a utility account. Flow regulators would be set for the maximum flow rate of 4 meters cubed per day to ensure the overall distribution system can supply adequate flow to each residence at any given time. It is proposed, pending the approval of council and the WRC board, that the water volumes drawn from the WRC's main transmission line be measured by a central meter located somewhere between the WRC's main transmission line and the Redland water distribution system. The WRC can then invoice the county for the county's water usage within Redland, like what is done for other hamlets within the county that are supplied with potable water via the WRC treatment and transmission line. The county would then set up utility accounts with each water user within Redland and bill each account holder according to their individual water meter readings. The total present day cost of the entire distribution system designed to service all 17 existing titled properties within the proposed Redland water servicing boundaries is $262,235, including a 10% contingency. This does not include the individual service connections to the main distribution line. So the service connections between the distribution line and the property line. This estimate was provided by the engineering consultant supporting the county on this potential project. Based on this estimate of the present day cost for installation of the distribution line, the individual distribution system connection fee for each titled property would be approximately $15,430. So that's the 262,235 divided by the 17. This distribution system fee represents full cost recovery of the system if service connections were installed for all of the 17 properties. The proposed distribution system fee may be revised following final engineering design and construction tendering. This fee does not include the connection to the main distribution line, the short length of piping, or the curb stop valve required between the main distribution line and each property line. Service connections to the main line and any infrastructure required on private property would be the responsibility of each landowner installing a service connection. Additionally, fees associated with setting up a utility account with the county, including the costs for a county supplied water meter and flow regulator, estimated at approximately $625 for both, would be managed as part of the process of setting up the individual utility accounts. That's similar to what is done right now with the water meters when people are setting up utility accounts. So just the addition with this would be a small addition for the flow regulator. The distribution system fees would be defined in the county's master schedule of fees bylaw and would be collected from property owners immediately prior to service connections being completed as a precondition to the county permitting work within the public right of way and permitting the landowner to connect to the main distribution line. This fee structure and collection process presents some risk to the county, as pre-investing in the installation of the main distribution line infrastructure would be required prior to collecting fees for service connections. Through consultation with the county's legal advisor, this proposed fee structure and collection process appeared to provide the simplest legal and administrative processes for both the county and the individual property owners desiring service connections. This proposed framework aims to provide a sustainable and manageable approach to water servicing for the Redland community, ensuring both immediate needs and future growth are addressed, while aiming to minimize the collective risk and liability to individual property owners and the county. As per the county's water and sewage services bylaw, once the distribution is in place, all new development, including redevelopment, on property adjacent to a county water main must connect to the water system prior to occupancy. This will be administered through conditions placed on future development and subdivision applications received by administration. For example, if a property owner applies to subdivide their property, essentially creating more than 17 properties in Redland, then conditions will require that a review of the existing water system be undertaken and any improvements or upgrades required to provide the services to the additional properties will be the responsibility of the applicant, obviously subject to the development authority approval. Although the current bylaw requires connection upon development, it does not require that properties must connect once the distribution, although the current bylaw requires connection upon development, it does not require that properties must connect once the distribution system is in place. During initial discussions with legal counsel regarding Redland water servicing, it was identified that council could consider a new bylaw that would require all properties in Redland to connect to the distribution system and pay all required fees. This would provide certainty of cost recovery for the project, but administration and legal do not recommend pursuing this option. Next steps, pending approval of the recommended resolution provided at the top of provided at the top of this report, administration would schedule a town hall meeting with the Redland residents to present the proposed servicing plan and fee structure. Administration would also discuss with the WRC updating the existing potable water service agreement to include the community of Redland. If both discussions yield favorable feedback in support of the proposed plan, administration will draft the required updates to the master schedule of fees bylaw, the water and sewage services bylaw, and the WRC water servicing agreement for review and potential approval by council. Administration would also present to council a proposed additional capital project to the county's current 2024 capital budget for installing the initial required water servicing infrastructure within Redland. That concludes my report. I'll just mention on page 269 for the follow-up actions and communications. There's a little bit more detail on those follow-up actions that I just mentioned, and I'm here for any questions.
Thank you. Any questions regarding the report?
Would you be bearing like a 2-inch line or is it smaller?
One of the, through the chair, one of the lines is 2-inch. Most of the line is 1-inch in the proposed plan that we have right now.
And there's no pressure reduction coming off the main line, all the pressure reductions in the house?
Through the
residents, I mean?
There may be some pressure reduction off of the main WRC transmission line. We don't have those final details on the design, but there could be a pressure reducer there, and then potentially within the residences.
There's a 2-inch there that would supply. You'll never have to put a new line in there. Redland's not growing much in 100 years. I like it. Thanks for your work.
Thank you. Just wanted to, I was looking at the numbers here and it didn't seem to jive. The 4 cubic meters a day is not 2.87 liters per second. It's actually 0.463 liter per second. And then I was trying to figure it out to GPM so everybody would know what that's, because that's where it goes. It works out to 0.73 gallons per minute. So it's a trickle system. So it relates to all of our own wells. So they have a cistern and it trickles in very slowly and it only gives a meter amount. Now that cubic meter per day is set by WRC. That's all of our rural user connections have the same, and that gives us the opportunity to not have a pressure system. Like the pressures for the bigger users, and even the county reservoirs have a restricted flow rate into them as well. So that's the reason behind it. So that's why they have to have cisterns, and that's why it's the smaller lines can accommodate that too. So depending on how big, so their cistern should be good enough for 4 cubic meters, which is 4 by 4 by 4. So if they want to use full amount per day, I guess that would be it. So I like it. Thank you very much.
Any other questions or discussion? Just have a couple of questions. I note that we're basing it on 17 properties, but we only have 10 properties that have residences. And in previous engagement, we had only had sort of 5 or 6 residents that had indicated an expression of interest in hooking up to the line. And so if we're looking at reasonable anticipation of expected uptake and cost recovery, if we say it was 6 residences that were connecting at $15,430, that would be just over $92,000 or 35% of the total cost recovery. And so I see administration's rationale for not requiring the hookup. I'm just concerned because obviously Wheatland County taxpayers are already subsidizing the water that's supplied on an ongoing basis through our utility rates. And that's consistent with every hamlet. That wouldn't be specific to Redland, but that's done in every hamlet that has water servicing. And we've had reports that that's heavily subsidized from general revenue or from taxation. So I'm just wondering if there's any way that we could reconsider if there was any rationale for not basing the costing, say, on number of residences and recognizing that the other parcels could develop out. But as Councillor Kester just alluded to, Redland has not been a focus of growth in the county. And I was wondering if there might be a way to structure, say you got closer to full cost recovery and then the other parcels developed out, if we could have some kind of provision that those funds would go into a reserve for capital replacement or maintenance or things like that. I'm just worried about the 35% cost recovery, which unless there's other information. And the reason I raise it is because obviously we want to engage with as close to accurate of costs with the residents so that they can make an informed decision when we're engaging. Thank you.
One of those questions I can address on the page 271 of the agenda package, and I apologize, I should have mentioned this in the report. So the initial infrastructure that would be planned based on what administration is understanding of the current Redland residents who are expressing interest to connect would just be that blue line which represents, I don't know the exact percentage, but I would say probably about 60% of the total cost of the system. So the cost to install the full system, the only portion that would get installed, at least initially, would be those who would like to connect up front. And so now that still doesn't represent 100% cost recovery of that blue line, unless the other properties hooked up to it, but I believe it's closer to about 70%. I'm trying from my memory to throw out percentages. I apologize if they're not 100% correct, but I think it's about 70% cost recovery of just that initial infrastructure. And administration can get council obviously some more accurate numbers on those if needed.
About 10 residents on that blue line now. That would probably take it if it's reasonable. Like, they don't have a lot of money, and a lot of them either.
So sorry, just to clarify, you're saying the $262,000 is for both the red and blue lines?
Through the chair, that's correct.
We would be anticipating building just the blue to start?
Yes.
Okay.
And through the chair, when if council does approve to meet with the community about this, we would have those discussions with the community as well. But the intention would be to, if there were additional residences or properties on the red line who wanted to connect right away, we would look at potentially some other options for reducing the upfront cost as much as possible. The reason it was split into two systems, one of the reasons that we talked with our engineering consultant that was driving up the cost of some previous options was the large central meter vault. And so we discussed with them the potential of splitting that vault into smaller, two smaller ones, which having two smaller ones rather than one large meter vault substantially reduces the cost of that vault. And so you can see the blue line on the north side there would have a proposed meter vault just off the WRC main line on the north, and then there would be another one located on the south for the other distribution line. So that does help reduce the cost quite a bit for the system and the overall community. And we would again aim to install as little infrastructure up front as possible to accommodate those who wanted to connect in the near term.
And did you say what the cost of just the blue line is? Did you say it was 70% of the 262 or is that something else?
Through the chair, I think it's probably about 60 to 60%. We do have those numbers. We've just been reluctant to share them in open camera. If the county does want to go and tender this work, we just don't want to influence the tender. If council does want to dive into some of those numbers, we can. We do have them available. I might just recommend going into camera, or of course, if council wants, we can share them openly now.
So when you go and make a public presentation, you'll have to tell them how much it's going to cost them. What number you're going to use? The blue line or the red line or both lines? Or
so through the chair, what we've done and structured and proposed in the report is that because there are currently 17 titled properties in the community of Redland, we just took the total cost of the full system, blue plus red, and divided that by 17 to get sort of the even distribution of costs. With the philosophy behind that is just everybody essentially gets the same service. They get potable water service connection to their residents, and so the idea behind that is the equal type of service and then equal payment. And so the thought is that the payment would just be shared equally among the 17 titled properties.
So if you had a talk with them and they just decided they wanted the blue line and not the red line, and then some of them parcels, the 17, just won't get water unless they put in the red, the new parcel guys put in the red line.
Yeah, yes, through the chair, that is one of the risks of going this direction with the county. Again, once we meet with the community and have a much better idea of who would be interested in connecting to these lines up front, we could look at that and potentially change the way this initial piping is laid out to accommodate as many service connections on the single line up front. There is a risk that once that blue line goes in place and the final design is done and the plan moves ahead, if, say, a single person on that red line wants to come and connect, the county is obligated to install that infrastructure. And so even if it's the furthest property down the line, we have to put in that line and then just wait for other property owners in the future to potentially hook up and pay their service connection. So there certainly is a risk that there will be additional infrastructure installed up front that the county might take a little bit of time to make up the difference. I hope that answers the question.
So is there a way to structure the payment schedule, like to break it down based on residences? Because realistically, would an undeveloped lot be like benefiting from the infrastructure? And you could structure it because we are requiring future development to connect to the system. And if you did collect any revenue generated from hookups after that, like I'll just run through a scenario. If you broke it down to, I think there's 10 residences that would be able to be connected based on the total system being presented, which would be around $26,000 per residence. And then if all 10 residents did opt in, recognizing it's voluntary, if they all did opt in, then we'd be at full cost recovery for the capital and just be subsidizing the operating costs for the water. Based on historical engagement, and it may have shifted, there may only be 6, but we're still much closer to full cost recovery, particularly if we do end up only building out the primary blue, the system that's denoted in blue. And then, so I think it would be reasonable to assume that those would be the interested parties would be where there's residences. If in the future the other titled parcels developed out, you could still have that same connection fee and put that into a reserve for this, like it. I don't want it to be net positive to general revenue from a capital perspective, but if you kept that delineated out, is there a legal reason why you couldn't do the cost breakdown that way and get closer to cost recovery?
We did discuss some of those options internally and also with our legal advisor. There are some options such as the endeavor to assist, things like that, or you can put it in some contracts. The reason why we are recommending this one at this time is just the simplicity of it for now and in the future. The other aspect of that, and to your point, is that blue line right now runs by what I believe are all of the existing residents in Redland. There is, you can see a building on Main Street, but I don't believe that's a residence. And so that does cover off, as far as I'm aware, all of the existing residences with that one line, and then the red line that would be potential in the future covers off the lots that currently are not occupied.
Deputy Reeve Clausen and then Councillor Kester.
So I'm just looking through this, trying to figure it. So if someone doesn't take it in the future and they want to connect up, there'll be a connection fee for that lot based on that area, or we separate would be like, I think some of our hamlets have a different fee, or how would that work? Like 5 years down the road, lot 1 on Main Street says I want water. They're going to have to come up with the money just like to connect into it.
Yeah, through the chair, the intention with this Through the chair, the intention for this would be a connection fee in the master schedule of fee bylaw that would be due completely upfront at the time of connection. For this one area defined as such in the master schedule of fees bylaw. Is the proposal anyway.
So it's a lot like an offset levy. The county puts in the infrastructure, you divide it by how much it is, and that's what it is, $16,000, 15. And then 5 years from now, somebody wants in, that's $15,000. It's no different than the West Highway 1 structure plan when we did the stormwater. No different than CGC, and they're only paying a certain amount of all the money we're paying for the water. And eventually, when everybody comes on board, we get our money back. No different for these guys. So why would we ask them to pay the $26,000 and put the surplus in a reserve? We didn't ask CGC to pay for all the water, and when somebody else comes along, we're going to charge them and put it in a reserve. I like this one because it's treating them the same as everybody else. 15,000 is 17. We can rework the numbers and just do the blue line and forget the red line. Make the hamlet smaller. That was the problem with the tax. It come to $500,000 is what the county wanted to build the thing, and people had to spend $50,000 to get water. They were paying for future development. And if you're telling them here, 6 landowners have to pay for the whole thing because there's 17 possibles, they're paying for future development. They're not the developers. They're just a citizen, no different than Origin Business Park or any of the rest that we put it in. We have to be fair to everybody. The same principle applies.
What would council's thoughts be about going in camera? I'd like to know what, just the breakdown of the water lines, and I understand why we don't want to do this in public. I just would like to know the breakdowns of the 2 different systems. That would make me
Sure. We'll move into closed session in just one moment. Just a couple of comments in response to Councillor Kester's comments. And I can't recall how much of the local improvement tax was in closed session versus open, but the actual costs are very similar to what we're looking at right now. If I recall, though, that was being looked at being broken down over 10 properties, and that's what I'm trying to delineate out why we've expanded it to 17, when one of council's principles was around cost recovery. And I think a key consideration that differentiates Redland versus either Goldfinch Industrial Park or West Highway 1 area structure plan industrial area is the potential and anticipated growth, where we do see anticipated growth in those industrial nodes, and we're encouraging it, and we're, obviously actively pursuing that, which substantially contributes to an industrial diversified tax base, which we rely on, to support agriculture and all of the industry in Wheatland County. Whereas, like you just referenced, Redland has not grown in the last 100 years, and we don't anticipate. And just hearing the comments around like 6 people paying, it's not 6 people paying for future growth, it's 6 people paying for the servicing that, if the uptake is only reasonably going to be 6 residences, how do we do that without the rest of Wheatland County taxpayers subsidizing those capital costs? So if there were 17 residences here now that we reasonably would anticipate were going to be contributing to the capital costs of this project, that would align with council's principles that I've heard in previous discussions around full cost recovery for the capital piece, acknowledging that there is not cost recovery and that we're striving towards cost recovery, but that's been challenging. Councillor Kester.
What are the odds of we're getting 17 residents in Redland?
That's exactly what I'm saying.
I'm thinking the price will be less than half of that. So put in a smaller line. That's all I'm saying.
I think the motions that are here gives administration the ability to go and find out who actually wants to be on there, and they can come back to us and report some more information. And then we can probably look at the numbers. Right now, those numbers could change because we don't know who actually wants to commit to it.
Well, we do have some historic engagement though, right?
We do, but there's been so many times, I'd rather have them go out and see exactly what's on, and who's actually committed to this, because I think WRC tried this exact same thing, and I believe I don't think we had any commitment. We never had anything come back to us. They've talked to us for doing the connections through the engagement, and realized there was so much liability, so.
I just think my concern is we do. Thank you. We do want our administration prepared to present numbers that are endorsed by council, I think is essentially it. And the ratepayers will need to be able to make an informed decision and have a reasonably close estimation, recognizing that there's the caveat that with final engineering and that type of thing, there could be, some amendments to the final cost, but there is a substantial difference between like a cost estimate splitting it 17 ways versus splitting it 10 ways. And if there's only 6 potentially uptake, like I'm just trying to estimate one of the principles that council has previously communicated was around cost recovery on the capital. And so I'm just trying to reconcile the reasonableness of meeting that principle. I think it would be prudent to move into a closed session. I am curious just about some of the financial pieces and how that relates to the structuring of the proposal.
Can we add it to the other closed session when we go in and do it then?
Yeah, absolutely. If administration is okay with that. Okay. And we can resume discussion when we come out of closed session as well, if there's further discussion. So let's perhaps just table this to be reconsider during the closed session to receive further information from administration. And let's move to agenda item 5.1. There was 2 pieces of correspondence from municipal affairs. Correspondence regarding our LGFF allocations for both capital and operating, as well as some information regarding Bill 20, which was passed last week with some amendments. So don't think any action required, although perhaps based on our conversation earlier today, we could send a letter to municipal affairs expressing our thanks for the LGFF capital and operating funding. No thanks for Bill 20. So perhaps we could do the motion to address the thank you letter, perhaps direct the REEF to send a thank you letter to the Minister of Municipal Affairs for LGFF. If somebody wants to make that motion.
I'll make the motion to direct administration to send a letter of thank you to the municipal affairs for the LGFF funding.
And just to clarify, that's on behalf of Raven Council, right?
That is just me. Okay, Raven Council.
That's good. So admin to draft a letter from Raven Council to Minister of Municipal Affairs. Any questions or discussion? I'll call the question. Motion is carried. And a motion to accept the rest or the correspondence as information.
So moved.
Thank you, Councillor Priest. Any questions or discussion? I'll call the question. Motion is carried. I'll now move us into closed session for disclosure harmful to the economic and other interests of a public body regarding Range Road 220A alignment, as well as information from administration regarding Redland water servicing. I'll call the question. Good afternoon. I just moved us out of closed session. I will call the question. Motion is carried and we have two motions arising. We could start with Redland Water. Councillor Kester.
The council directs administration to engage with the landowners in Redland to present the Redland water servicing plan, proposing its installation on a cost recovery basis as discussed in closed session at the June 4th, 2024 council meeting, and bring back a summary report for council's consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kester. Any more questions or discussion? I'll call the question. Motion is carried. We had a motion arising regarding the road allowance alignment.
I move the council approves the addition of $209,151 to the 2024 capital budget for the correction of the road right-of-way alignment as presented to be funded from the Transportation Unpaved Roads Ways Reserve.
Any questions or discussion? I'll call the question. Motion is carried. That brings us to the conclusion of our agenda and meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everybody.